everyone to Spooky Japan podcast. How's everyone doing? Today we have a very special guest with us, Michael from Paralanx. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
We're doing pretty good. It's about time you've been on our show.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad we could finally get our schedules to work.
Yes. So in case anyone's wondering, he has stud next to his name. He did that for me because I told him he also needed stud in his title. So because I know people are gonna ask, why did he put stud? It's for me. So
Yeah, I'm willing to do things for hosts on our network, so it's a, I'm happy to help out.
yes, yeah. Like I said, it's definitely time you've been on our show. I was like, when is
Mm-hmm.
Michael gonna be on our show?
Mm.
Finally, that is now.
Yep.
So, where did your journey into paranormal start, Michael?
So that is a very fun topic because it has a multi-layer answer. So it actually began at 2, but I wasn't aware of that until really I was in my 30s. So the reason that is growing up in a metaphysical community and atmosphere, a lot of experiences, I just was like, yeah, this was a really cool spiritual experience and everything. And then in my 30s, found out what I was calling spiritual experiences were paranormal experiences. So I was like, huh. So I grew up with the paranormal.
That's how I feel like that's where mine did. I grew up in the church parsonage of a Baptist church up in Michigan because my dad was a minister, and we had haunted experiences in that house that we couldn't explain. And it's something that we didn't really realize until like after we're starting to move out that every family, because we never really talked about it, especially when every family member experienced the same things where we'd be home alone and you'd hear distinct footsteps walking down the hall. So you would think, oh, someone came home. So you'd go and look, and there's absolutely no one in the house and stuff like that.
Right. And the fun one for me is there's like this new phenomenon that I've come across of everyone's like, ooh, shadow people. And I was like, I grew up with them. I was like, I grew up and I'd see them out of the corner of my eye all the time. And so I was just like, ah, there's a spirit over there. No big. And then I was like, getting into the paranormal, and I was like, oh, you guys call these shadow beings. Okay.
I think being when I came to Japan is when I seen the most shadow figures. That's because they're just spirits here are not shy. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm here. What are you gonna do about it?
Yeah.
Well, I think I would be most concerned if you were having like the samurais showing up because
Luckily, I haven't yet.
No. That'll be on my side of this.
Yeah, I was gonna say that might be more, when I get up there towards Irene, we'll see.
Yeah.
Mine, it's funny, and I tell people this. Japan, it's not really a large island country, but it's funny because spirits here are different. Like, the spirits here, I'm in the southern part of Japan. They're different here than where Irene is in Tokyo. But then the ones in the north have their own thing going on too. So they're all completely, like, different.
that's because of the history of the island. It was different kingdoms, and so they would have different. Like some had samurais, some had regular soldiers, some just were farmers. So yeah, you can't. It'd be like saying the United States has Native American spirits. It's like, well, yeah, but they're different tribes
Yeah.
represented in different ways, so you can't lump us all into one
No.
category.
No. I think hers on her side it's mostly old and mostly sad how they died. They didn't have they didn't have a choice on her side, and my side is mostly S people. they died by their own hand. And you get the more deviant, the more jealous ones, and the more crazy, interesting ones on my side than her side. Her side, you just feel sad and sorry for. My side, it's like, yeah, you can't come near me. Like, you have to put up your guard more on this side than you do on her side.
I wonder too if that would be because being around Tokyo,
Hmm?
that would mean you'd have more of the. I'm trying to think of the correct term for it. Is the ceremonial suicide,
Mm-hmm.
where they were found guilty of something and were given the choice of ceremoniously taking their life or doing something else, and so a lot of them would take their life.
Not
So,
just that, but you find the train stations, they're jumping in front of trains, they're doing everything else on this side. It's just more, you got to be careful on this side. And you can't rent an apartment on this side unless you have a clairvoyant with you. It's just kind of like you don't want to be stuck in a situation where you're going to be in trouble like I was. And yeah, no one to help you because nobody believes it, right? It's just more the dangerous side is on this side.
yeah. So actually, I have an interesting question for you too,
Hmm.
because Japan, they build upward.
Hmm.
So if there's a spirit attached to the land, does
Hmm.
it affect every level, or how do you clear that out? Because
You really can't.
You can't.
Especially, I mean, Irene had to move away from her apartment complex for that same reason.
Yeah, it was on the 12-story complex, and people started jumping for no reason. I think it was residual energy because one day you'd be fine, next day you'd be out of your mind and you'd be jumping, and they jumped to their death. And yeah, like the whole building is haunted, and it affects certain people really bad. So either you'd be going through a divorce, or lose your money, or you die. Pick your choice. It's like a multiple question thing. So yeah, that's what happens, and it'd be kind of like I find the whole thing dangerous, right? So we had to run. Actually, we had to run, and we left most of our furniture there. So I just didn't want to bring it here, so I just had to run. And that's all. Yeah, and I didn't want to bring any furniture with anything of attachment on it in this place. So yeah, either or. Like
how do you buy furniture in Japan though that doesn't have something attached to it? With
uh,
so much of the land being haunted, it's like inevitable. It's like
yeah.
I would think.
But I'm glad I live in a land that's not haunted, and
Well, that's
it
good.
yeah. But
Well,
when
you
I go,
also here in Japan, they try to avoid the paranormal or anything haunted. So that's why we don't have antique stores. You can't just go antiquing. We don't have those kind of stores. We don't really have many secondhand stores here.
there is a secondhand store. It, don't you know that?
I
But it's
think there's
most
like one.
yeah. It's they only have one for uh, like games and one for clothes, but and for trinkets, but nothing really like estate jewelry and nothing like that.
Yeah. So I'm curious, Amanda, what got you to Japan?
My husband is in the Navy, so we're down here in the Nagasaki base.
Mm.
Ah, okay.
And that's also why I say mine is obviously different than hers, also because we also have a lot of cryptids. Now, we don't have here because it is so taboo to talk about the paranormal. We don't have like
Mm.
Bigfoot hunters here to go out and find these cryptids. It's things where a lot of people have seen, but they don't actually try to go research or learn more. And scientists' best guess, they're saying, without actually trying to catch one and experiment or research, their best guess is because here in Nagasaki, I have like about 2 hours away, Nagasaki bomb area, and then about 4 or 5 hours north of me is the Hiroshima one. So they think a lot of the radiation
Fallout.
mixed with either humans around it or animals around it and created these cryptids. So we have a lot more cryptids around this area than you would find in like Tokyo.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could make sense actually. I mean, that's how the Godzilla tale got started, as they were saying originally was radiation. Now they're saying it's a portal from another world. So
And now they're saying that there would be a Godzilla now than ever before, because they're saying, would it be because the radiation, or would it be because the the volcanoes? They're asking that question too. So we still don't know.
yeah. So I don't mean to take over the show, but
We don't care.
We don't.
I'm curious because talking about the volcanoes and stuff. What are your guys' thoughts of the underwater temples and cities and all that they're finding in Japan?
They call it. They're saying it's aliens from outer space that created it.
So is that your guys' take too, or
I can kind of see how that might be the thing, because as Irene can tell you, so every year there is earthquake, I guess, season here.
Mm-hmm.
Where every year there's certain times where you should be expecting earthquakes.
Yeah.
And the bigger one is the more people trying to look to the sky, because that's when you start seeing UFO activity. So they
Yeah.
think maybe it's coming from the water here,
Mm-hmm.
which kind of plays in that theory that some UFOs are in underwater.
Yeah.
all right?
Or or in the volcanoes or something like that. They're thinking that too,
Yeah,
because we have our own Bermuda Triangle off the Pacific Ocean.
yeah,
Where,
and not to mention down south is the Ring of Fire, which is its own little fun.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we get a lot of ships that come up empty, and they're still they're floating in the water. The police have to bring it ashore, and there's nobody in it, no pilot, no nothing. They're just fishing vessels, right?
Yeah,
And
I've heard a lot of them.
there's nothing in it except, and they're wondering why it happened, and there's no answer to it. But yeah, it's it's like their own, well, not paranormal, but mostly a portal. They're calling it, right?
Right.
But nobody's really going to talk about it here because they're saying, "Yeah, we don't go into that subject. We don't talk about that." I go, "Then what do you talk about, right?" We don't say that.
Yeah, I belong to a Facebook group about ghost ships, and we
Mm-hmm.
get so many reports of ghost ships off of Japan, and where the ships are of all ages,
Mm-hmm.
from junks, which I know are Chinese, but they show up, and other fishing trawlers will show up, or fishing boats and
And they're
naval vessels, and there'll be zero crew,
yeah,
but the ship looks like it's in perfect condition to sail, but they can't explain where the crew is.
my blood.
Naval vessels too.
There's been a couple of them.
Yeah. I belong to the only one and only Japanese UFO group, and it's this guy from this country created his own UFO group. It's called Terra UFO, and yeah, he's the only person in this country that posts pictures of of UFO sightings in Japan, and it's just weird because they're in the sky and it looks like, you know, Mothman. It looks like I had one that looks like a moth. That looks like a I don't know what it looks like. Looks like a something between a dragonfly, whatever. And everyone says, "Oh, that's fake." And I said, "No, it's not fake. You know, it's in the sky. And how can it be an insect? Because an insect looks different, right?"
Right.
It just he had wings and he had feet and he had a head. And they're saying, "What the heck is it?" And that's off in Japan all the time. Like there's a whole bunch of UFO studies in Japan all the time. Even when you're flying to Japan from America, they go over kind of like the North Pole because they try to prevent going over Russia because you get shot down. So, so they go over kind of like the North Pole because it's a shorter route than going around the Pacific Ocean, right? So they go kind of like north and they fly down. And anytime you go from the North Pole, you see a lot of UFO activity floating around in the sky, and they're wondering why, and nobody understands that. And it's just like phenomenal, especially if you're anywhere near the nuclear power plant. You get lots of it, right?
Right.
Because
And I love how you pointed out the dragonflies, Irene, because I was like, it reminded me of the movie Dune, the new
hmm
one where they had those dragonfly helicopters,
hmm
like craft.
hmm
And our military actually has helicopters that do those wing flaps
mm.
as well, and they look like dragonflies. And so I was like, as you were telling that, I was like, I wonder if that was one of our copters
Mm.
flying over, and people were like, "Hey, look at that giant dragonfly! That's got to be a UFO."
But that's really weird. It's over Mount Fuji too, right? And the
Yeah,
military has access in Japan, so they're all over the place, but they're only in helicopters.
What's
you
your
know, and
theory? What's your theory on military ships coming will be found completely empty?
well, so
Now to see, they found like a navy, I'm gonna assume navy ship, and but there's no crew. Like the crew vanished.
Uh, I haven't heard of any like military vessels, but I have heard of civilian vessels being empty. And usually, what that happens is they may have hit a rough wave, got tossed overboard, but the ship somehow managed to keep going. That's usually the end result of that. It's an unfortunate thing, just like when a ship capsizes and no one's there to rescue them. It's the same thing. They hit a wave, they got tossed overboard,
Mhm.
and it's unfortunate. But that's usually the
Well,
results.
there's been a few military ships, and I'm like, I don't know how a military ship could completely be out there in the ocean or sea or wherever it is. They find it and they board it, and there's like no one on there.
It's definitely not a U.S. vessel. Probably one of the other countries that doesn't have a strict doctrine. No, I can't speak for other countries, but yeah, most like U.S. Navy vessels have a strict doctrine with man overboard. And whenever there's rough seas, everyone it's we're alerted,
Mhm.
and we have to stand fast and make sure that nothing flies off the bulkheads. Because even if things are secured for sea, rough seas can toss shit. One of the most dangerous things that can be tossed in our spaces is printers.
Critters.
Printers, because we have printers and they're mounted, but a lot of them are strapped. Like the smaller ones are generally strapped into place. So if we hit with my ship, there's no need to worry because it's a big deck. Waves don't really affect it. Smaller ships, I don't know. I haven't been on one, but I just personally say printers can be a problem if you hit hard enough seas. Just anything can be a missile if you hit hard enough seas.
Yeah. Just wondering what your take is on military ships coming up abandoned.
That's other countries. That's their problem, not my problem.
Oh yeah, that man overboard. I've heard it because we
Uh-huh.
obviously there's the bay behind me, and even with it being docked, somehow someone, yeah, somehow someone still fell off the ship, and we could hear it clear from all the way from our house. We just heard the man overboard. So it's pretty loud.
Yeah. So I don't know. I could mention a project that may explain
Mhm.
the ships being empty, but I don't know how far you guys are into the rabbit hole, so to speak, of stuff that goes on. But if you look at the history, and I hate to say it with the military, it could be U.S. is we had the Philadelphia experiment, which they phased a ship out of natural space, brought it back, and people were inside the bulkhead. So it's not, it is possible that they continued the experiments and have figured out how to remove people and keep the ships intact because, military loves to play with, getting the upper hand on how to sneak things in and get the upper hand. So there's a
How
lot
they
of dark
do
programs out there.
Mhm.
they do secret experiments. Like I've heard of and I know it's kind of going into the whole movie with secrets with the super soldiers. Everyone's thinking, oh, that's Captain America. I'm like, nah, it's what I've heard. There's real experiments where they're trying to make like super soldiers too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Montauk. Check
Mhm.
that out if you want to know about them. That's one of the bases. But yeah, that I can attest that program is real. It is a
Mhm.
black ops dark web program, and it does exist, and is a nasty, nasty program.
Mhm.
And that's one people's theories about movies is sometimes a lot of movies are made to cover up conspiracy theories because if you Google it, all you're gonna do is find like Captain America, pretty much.
Right. And the Winter Soldier, yeah.
Um.
But at the same token, though, you could look at it the flip side of they are disclosing that we are doing this by putting it in the movies.
Mhm.
Mhm. That's
Some
true.
people have actually seen the Men in Black, but obviously, if you try and Google anything about it, the movie pops up, so you really can't find much on it.
Yeah.
Right.
And then Close Encounters pops up too, and that was supposed to be based on the true story too.
Yeah, and I think that was in Colorado, wasn't it? Superstition Mountain was the mountain of that movie.
There's also Superstition Mountains in Arizona that has some lore to it too.
Mm,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I can tell a lot of, I think, you look into the ancient stories, and by
Mhm.
ancient in America, I mean like native stories,
Mhm.
and you can find a lot of legends around stuff. And if you look at it from the eye of a paranormal investigator,
Mhm.
it's like, oh, we just hit jackpot.
Mhm.
There is a base of operations over here for this, or a lot of possible activity over here. Let's get over there.
It's funny, because a lot of UFO activity that they do show here is near Mount Fuji, and they don't, and it's just, and there's always something, and Mount Fuji's in the background. Yeah, that's weird, and it's just because Mount Fuji's haunted, right?
It's also a
Uh,
sacred mountain, isn't it?
yeah, Yeah, it's a live
Yeah.
volcano. And then you got the suicide forest, you got the 5 creepy lakes underneath there. It's just like that whole area is just really weird. And every picture that I've seen in Terra UFO has Mount Fuji in the background, and you're wondering, why is that, right? What is it about that place that's so interesting, right?
It
And
is, and it's so sacred that
yeah,
I feel like almost like probably 85-90% of every anime I've seen has Mount Fuji
yeah,
appear in it, and it's
yeah.
like, yeah, it's there's definitely something
About it.
sacred and
Yeah.
active about that
It,
that's deep in the Japanese culture.
it's kind of creepy. It goes between, there's a fine line between sacred and creepy, right?
Right.
It hits you in the creepy side and it goes in the sacred side. You don't know which side you're hitting is creepy or sacred. And when you live in Tokyo, like going not north that way, go, going straight towards Mount Fuji, is you got all these creepy haunted crypts, or what would you call it, like grave, graves of single, like a samurai warrior or something. Like you get all these creepy, really, like you're going towards Mount Fuji, and then in these different areas in the mountains are these creepy haunted places that you can visit to on the way to Mount Fuji. It's like they're all clustered in that area, right? You don't know why.
Yeah.
You don't know why. It's just something that's, why is that, right? Nobody can answer that.
Well, it could be that there's a portal there,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
or a device like a Stargate could be there, and
Yeah.
so they're using it to travel around.
It's just like, it's just not like, everyone think, why is that? And I said, yeah, because when I look at it through a map, there's Tokyo that's haunted, and there's, on the way there is Mount Fuji, which is also haunted, and it's just like, it's clustered in certain areas where it's really bad the most, and you get the most freakiest things that happens around that area, right? So it's just a place to kind of like, let's investigate, right?
Yeah.
So
Hey,
I'm
I
just,
got to give a shout out to Matt. He's one of our new co-hosts on Paranormal Versus.
aim at, yeah, it's just something that's really weird going on, right? And in that area, going towards that area, and you feel like it's a magnet when you look at Mount Fuji in your car window, right? It's like a huge magnet. You say, I gotta go there, I gotta go there, I gotta go there. And you don't know why you have feel that feeling. You don't know why you have to say that. But it's just like really creepy feeling otherwise than that.
Have you ever looked to see if there's ley lines there?
I haven't. I haven't.
Because ley lines, being sacred energy lines of the planet, if
Mm-hmm.
it's an intersection there,
Mm-hmm.
that would mean there's a huge intensity of energy, and so that may be what calls
Mm-hmm.
people who are more sensitive to the energy to Mount Fuji.
Mm-hmm. And a couple of air crashes that happened hit the mountain too. So you have that also. You have the energy from that also. And apparently there was only one person that survived that air crash. And it's just really, ugh. Every time you go over it and you see it through the airplane window, you just feel like there's something there that we don't know. And I don't know what it is.
It's definitely my theory with the suicide forest. Suicide forest is right below Mount Fuji. There
Yeah.
has to be a portal there because what a lot of people not in Japan don't realize is that whole forest is basically like two different forests. We have obviously the part of the forest that is not so good. Nothing really grows. You don't see any animals. You don't even hear any birds chirping.
Mm.
Trees sometimes grow in weird directions that people can't, even scientists are just like, I don't know why these trees are growing in all these different ways. And obviously that's where people are attracted to go and unalive themselves. But there's also part of the forest that is completely different, where a lot of the locals around say we hike that daily because this part of the forest is peaceful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, the birds chirp, you feel at peace. But we also know you don't take this path this way, or you don't go past that point, because that's where it starts to change. So it's like two
Yeah.
different forests in that one forest. It's not the whole entire forest is obviously not where people go and try and do what they want to do to get rid of the pain, to make
Mm-hmm.
it social media friendly. But there's also part of it where it's more peaceful. People feel at peace and they love hiking there. It's beautiful, and it's just it's two opposites in that forest.
And then there's another part where the scientists who go up to measure the magma in the middle of in the middle of the volcano, and that's also haunted too. And they've died climbing the mountain. They've died going down the mountain, and yeah, they don't know why, but my mother said, my mother said always that Mount Fuji is haunted.
Yeah, I almost want to say I'm curious to look at the mystic side of it and be
Mm-hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
were ceremonies done on one side versus the other, and what kind of ceremonies those were? Because that might explain the division and why, if you think about it, like if a battle happened and someone placed a curse, that might
Mm-hmm.
explain why the energy is so low and
Yeah.
so
That's
like
yeah. That's
horrible in a way on
Yeah.
that
one of
side.
my two theories is either someone portal opened there, or someone did some kind of ceremony, or I guess ceremony or curse there to draw that attention to that part of the forest. That's one of my two theories. I haven't
Is
been
that
there to really feel it, and I feel like with how many people have gone there to do it, I feel like it'd be that energy would be too strong for me to exactly find that one area, because I feel like that energy has to be so overwhelming with how many souls are still trapped in that part of that forest.
yeah.
Right. And the hard thing about it too is a lot of people, when we're talking about portals, they figure it's in fixed space. And so you can't, what they don't realize is, like, I can't say, yes, there's a portal in the center of
Mm-hmm.
the suicide force that's sucking the life out of everything. Because an hour later, it may be more in the southern side of the forest. The portals move.
Mm.
And so they're not fixed points. And that's what's challenging too is, you could sit there all day and say, oh, I cleared this spot, so it's great. Well, for
Yeah.
that moment,
Yeah.
but as the energies are moving around and
Mm-hmm.
whatever's coming in what area
Mm-hmm.
could draw the portal and make that person worse. And that's why you
Mm-hmm.
have to be careful of the line, is
Mm-hmm.
because, yeah, energy attracts energy. And so if you're
Mm-hmm.
low, feeling, depressed and feeling like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I got nothing to live for, and you cross the line, that portal is going to be like dinner time,
Yeah.
find you, absorb you, and
Mm-hmm.
move on.
Mm-hmm. It's like that's how my condo was like. And man, that was something else. It was so scary. Ugh. There was in a day that I wasn't scared. And if it's that kind of feeling going there, I don't know. Like, I want to go there, but I want to do it in a different way. Not kind of like to investigate, but to kind of like calm the spirits, but giving offerings. but I wouldn't want to do it as to go in there and investigate, because once you've been in a certain area and you lived in a certain area, they know it, right? They know
Right.
exactly who you are, and they know exactly you from inside and out, right? So yeah,
Yeah,
and they
and
know your history and everything. So
yeah, and Matt could be onto something with the geomagnetics because
mm-hmm,
I know women have been found to be more electric and men
mm-hmm,
more um, what's the word, electromagnetic,
mm-hmm,
and so we vibrate differently, and
mm-hmm,
so when those energies mix, yeah,
mm-hmm,
it could cause reaction, and that's why some people, could walk through the forest and be totally fine, and
mm-hmm.
others are like 3 steps in, done.
Yeah, but I noticed there's a lot of males have been going into the suicide forest just to see, and you're talking about um American men too, have males have gone into the forest and getting lost and feeling really freaky and getting really scared. So you'll find more men trying to travel and try to see what it's all about than more females, right?
Right.
So I mean, Amanda and I are planning to go, um and we were wondering how would they react to a female than more of a male, right?
And one thing, Amanda, you and Irene can do is take old school like compasses, the handheld ones that are like
Mhm.
fluid based or not electric,
Mm-hmm.
and take it in there and see if north stays north or if it starts spinning out of control, because that's another thing people don't realize
Mm-hmm.
is if there's a lot of energy there
Mm-hmm.
and the magnetics are off, our equilibriums in our ears
Mm-hmm.
are attuned to that. So if it's off, our sense of uh, stability will be off, and so
Mm-hmm.
that's why people can get lost. Is
Mm-hmm.
you may be on the line, but your mind is like
Mm-hmm.
lost its sense of direction and lost every sense and going, okay, I'm lost. I'm gonna die, and you just give up because it's like you
Yeah.
can't get a bearing
Yeah.
You
because
might
your
have a point with,
equilibrium.
Yeah.
yeah.
As to the comment, don't go. Well, it's a part of our research as a paranormal investigator, as a sensitive, as a clairvoyant. There are things that we don't want to do, but we do it anyways. There are some places that I will not go, some buildings that I will not go because the negative energy. But this place is a little bit different. Um, I want, because I've lived in a suicide condo. I know what to expect. Um, I I've lived through it. That's how I become. That's how I became a clairvoyant. Living through that area and living through that experience made me more sensitive. Made me see more. So in a way, it's given me my energy to do what I can do now, to help people what I can do now. And I don't know if I'd say won't go, but I need to go. And there's another place that I find it's really interesting is the suicide waterfall that people don't know. It's only Japanese people know, and Amanda didn't know either. But yeah, it's a place where people jumped off the waterfall after the war when Japan lost the war. They didn't want to be. They didn't want to be. Um,
Subjugated.
yeah, or no, they didn't. They didn't want another country
Dishonored.
to, yeah, to own Japan. So a lot of old elder people jumped off the waterfall. It's a beautiful waterfall. It's called Keon Taki. Taki means waterfall, and Keon Waterfall is the name of it. It's a big, huge gor- gorge, and it's off the. It's you have to climb. You have to like take your car. And you have to climb a little bit to get into the space where you can go across the waterfall and take a look at it. but it's just wonderful. But when you take still pictures, this- you could see the residual energy of the people climbing the waterfall and jumping into the waterfall. So, and that's on the way to Mount Fuji too. So that's due north of where I live, and it's just some places that are like that, and it's it's mostly a, a local place where you go and travel to have for maybe an outing or just go on vacation. It's one of the most largest local vacation spots to visit, and it doesn't matter if you're in the wintertime. It doesn't matter if you're in the summertime. It, it doesn't matter if you're in the daytime or nighttime. You could see the spirits jumping off the waterfall, and if you hear very closely, you could hear them yelling or screaming as they jump. So it's
Right.
just
And
one of those places that you don't think it's haunted, but it is haunted.
yeah, and I would say, doing, as sensitive, as you may be, I would still say take someone with you if you are
Yeah,
going to
you
do it.
can't go alone
Yeah,
regardless.
because
Yeah,
Going back to this, don't tempt fate. Going back to this, what you were saying,
yeah,
Michael, earlier is that once if you feel a little bit of doubt, you want to enter that part of the forest, it's going to feed off of you. There
yeah,
has been a lot of there is like a superstition there where if you do go to that part of the forest,
yeah,
don't follow any strings because it's strings to people are just
yeah,
like I'm just gonna go in, but I have intentions of coming out, and you find the body at the end of it because the
yeah,
energy they couldn't take it, and
right.
yeah,
they couldn't take the sadness, so they just ended up
yeah.
Well, and one of the
relieving the
things,
pain.
yeah, and the other thing too is the energy when your mind starts experiencing something that it cannot process,
Mm-hmm.
it creates an image that will, it feels like you may be, thinking about or drawn to.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're missing a loved one and you're in this forest feeling really sad,
Mm-hmm.
like you're saying, there could be this string that's pulling you in, and what's on the other end of that string, your mind may be going, oh, look, there's your loved one. You can go
Yeah.
have a moment with them, and you're
Or,
drawn in because of your sadness and
mhm.
everything. And then it's like, boom, you're trapped.
Yeah, and you can't come out of it, right?
It
Right.
Because
definitely
it
amplifies it too. I've been in certain places where it'll feed off that energy, but also brings back memories and it amplifies the feelings where something that might have happened
yeah,
decades ago that wasn't really that much of a big deal all of a sudden becomes like the worst thing you ever did mentally, and it just starts kind of feeding you that where you just for some odd reason you feel more guilty
yeah.
now than you
Right.
did then, and it just kind of starts doing that where it amplifies that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like you
Also,
could have
yeah,
had a death and processed it, and you've come to peace with it, and you go into
Mm-hmm.
the forest, and the forest may cause that person to appear and go,
Mm-hmm.
how could you let me die? And then it's like you're thrown right back in square one,
Yeah,
in a worse place, because now you're like feeling attacked, and you let this person down, and it's like you never felt that before. And so now it's
yeah,
like, ooh, now you get into possible depression, and bam,
yeah.
that's exactly what they're wanting.
we
Well,
were saying it before, Matt, is Japan has their own Bermuda Triangle, so it is possible there is another smaller Bermuda Triangle in that part of the forest.
yeah. And with my problem is that I can hear the spirits. I can have full blown conversation with them, right? And we could sit there for hours. We could talk. And my problem is that I could hear them, right? I could hear them what they're saying to me. And I've had spirits tell me to go kill yourself, right? And I said, nah, I'm not gonna do that. And then I had to turn it off until I moved to this place. But I mean, yeah, it's just like when you have 50 spirits telling you to go kill yourself, you think, not do that, like, so I have to turn off my hearing to be able to go there and just concentrate on doing what what I am to do, aim to do, and then leave right in one
Well, that's
piece.
why I was saying, yeah, make sure you go with someone. So if you do
Yeah,
start hearing those voices,
yeah,
you can address them and you have someone there to tell you, yeah,
yeah,
those aren't the voices we're here to talk to. Quiet
yeah,
those, ignore those,
yeah.
stay focused. And Matt's got an interesting question for you, Irene.
Mm-hmm.
Is what is the Japanese view on the afterlife, heaven, paradise, etc.?
Japan is mostly a Buddhist country, okay? On Amanda's side, there are a lot of Christians because there's a big Catholic church. There's several big Catholic churches where Amanda lives in Nagasaki because um, the Portuguese ship and the Spanish ship landed in Nagasaki first. And so they have a lot more Christians there than they have in Tokyo on this side of Japan. So, um, if you are in pain, physical, mental pain, you are allowed to um not live anymore. You are allowed to die in as with honor. Okay, it's called dying with honor, and you're allowed to outlive yourself. And yeah, you're allowed to die, and hoping that you find peace and harmony and come back as a different being or human and live a new life. That's what they believe in. So it's just totally different. And even Buddhist monks um go in a cave, drink a bark from a poisonous plant that'll dry your insides out and become a mummy, so they can live through the mummy. So, and that's illegal now. The police department has claimed it that's illegal, so you can't do that anymore, right? But that's what they did back then. And there are a lot of Buddhist temples with their mummy inside, right? And the Buddhist priests put get new silk kimonos and dress them up, and then at the end, when they make a new at the end of the year, they cut the kimono up, and the people can own a piece of that and put it in the wallet as something sacred or something um good for them, like lucky spiritually for them, so they can live throughout their life being spiritual and being lucky, right? So it's another thing that they do that's a little bit off, right? That people think, why would you want to have a piece of silk cloth that's from a mummy and keep it in your wallet and make sure and saying that it's good for luck and good for a prosperous life? And I said, yeah, that's kind of twisted, isn't it? But no, that's how they think here, and that's what they do. And a Buddhist temple is usually for the dying or for the dead. A shrine is for the living. So it's just when you're dead, you go to Buddhist priest. When you're living, you go to a Shin, you go to like a Shinto priest or Shinto shrine as the living to give you better health. Or if you're sick, you go to Shinto shrine. If you're dead, you go to a Buddhist priest. They'll make sure that you go to heaven. So it's just there's a fine line between the two.
I'm
So
glad you
one
shared
person,
that because I've often
one
been curious the difference between the shrines and the temples. So I'm glad you explained that.
Yeah.
so one interesting thing here they believe here with death too is they have they believe in someone called Enma here, where he is like head of he is head of the underworld basically, where he is in charge of like punishment down there, but
Mm-hmm.
he's also head of the council that decides where everyone goes in the afterlife. He's also a more deciding person who
Mm-hmm.
decides where you go in the afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
Even though yes, he has that reputation because he's down there, obviously like I said, head of punishments, things like
Mm-hmm.
that down there. He actually does not want people to go down there if they don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not a good person in life, he may give you some tests. And he hopes that you do pass these tests because he doesn't want you end up in the not so good place in the
Yeah.
afterlife.
Right.
And
Yeah. I
it's
think the
funny also
Egyptians
about
had that too.
Yeah,
it's
there is
funny.
He is based off the Egyptian god, basically, of
Yeah.
that, which I forgot what the Egyptian god name was for that.
Anubis.
Anubis. He's the guide to the underworld.
Yeah. There's another thing here is that when you die, you see the Grim Reaper comes for you. We call it a god. So it's called Shinigami. Shini means dying. The god of the death, right? It's called translated in English. And the Shinigami will come and get you and bring you to a better place. So it doesn't have this really creepy feeling like the Grim Reaper does in the Western world. Shinigami is more like you be you're better off if the Shinigami takes you than something else takes you.
Yeah, and to piggyback a little bit on what we were talking about with the mummy strips,
Mhm.
I grew up to where it was like if you had something of someone who passed on,
Mhm.
it was like a way to keep them close to you was to like wear their a piece of their jewelry or
Yeah. Yeah.
wear their shirt or just keep something of theirs around you. And
Mhm.
so I don't. It's like when people say that's creepy. To me, it's like it's not so creepy. It's more of honoring
Yeah.
and keeping a memory alive, not
Yeah.
the spirit, but the memory.
Yeah. Because it's kind of like a blessed thing, right? You're blessed
Right.
with it from somebody's jewelry. You're blessed with your ancestors' jewelry. You're blessed with your ancestors' clothes. So you want to keep it alive inside you, right? Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah. So yeah, I was just throwing that out there. In metaphysics, it's you actually want to have something of that person just
Yeah.
to honor their memory and
Mhm.
keep their
Mhm.
memory alive and allow them to do what they're wanting to do, but keep
It,
that bond.
within it, it has to be within your family. It can't be something from somebody else's family, right? It's got to be from your own family. That's the one thing that I'm going to stress, that you never have something from somebody else's family. If it's inherited from from one of your ancestors, yes. But if it's from somebody else's family, usually you're supposed to give it back to their family because it doesn't belong to you, right?
Well, see,
Unless.
that's a funny thing because in metaphysics, we view family as not blood.
Mhm.
So, like, I could say in metaphysics, I feel like Amanda's my sister.
Mhm.
So, if she was to give me a piece of jewelry or something, I would, and something happened to her, I would wear it in memory of family. I
Mhm.
wouldn't sit there and go, oh, she's not blood related. I have to give it back. So, there's a different definition
Yeah.
of family.
Yeah.
But here, unless you're given that piece of jewelry by that person that you don't know, or an object by that person that you don't know, this here, I want you to have, this is for you, this is yours. When that person is alive, you can accept it. But if the person has died, it's really hard to accept it because um they don't want that energy happening to them, or whatever. If they died of something, they don't want the same effect on their family as happened to them, so they usually give it back. They usually don't
Yeah, I
accept
can
it.
understand that. I was
Yeah.
just, yeah, I was
Yeah.
just, it threw me off when you said if you're not family,
Yeah.
don't
And
accept. I was like, wait, that depends on your definition.
yeah, but you see, that's the same thing as giving a name to a baby. You never give a name to a baby from the person who you treasured as a friend or as a family member who died, because it could be the same effect of your child would die from the same thing, from the same illness. Like if your grandmother had cancer, right? And you want to keep the memory of that person alive, so you give the same name, given name, as that child to the child, meaning that child could die from the same um illness, like a cancer or brain cancer. It doesn't matter. So you never give a child a given name from a person that has died. especially from something really bad like cancer or an illness. So you don't do that. You give a child a new name that's not attached to anything.
That actually makes sense in a way. I can understand that, and yeah, because the name would carry the energy and essence
Hmm.
and could imprint on
Hmm.
to whoever's coming around.
Yeah. Like if you had a child that died from leukemia and you get pregnant again and you have another child, if it's the same sex that died, you give the same name, but you give it a brand new name. Um, my children's name have nothing to do with my ancestors or anything else like that. We give them all new names and all samurai names of special samurai warriors who had a prosperous life and died of old age long time ago, but were really strong. That's the name that you can use, but you don't give a name that a samurai warrior has committed suicide or a samurai warrior who had died from illness. We never do that. It's very we're very suspicious people. Okay, superstitious people. So you always check out the history of that samurai warrior if you're going to use that name for your child. They it's like one country is really superstitious. If you want to call it superstitious country, call it Japan because it's really they live on superstition, right?
So,
Which
does
is
the
funny.
name only affect the first name, or is the middle name just as energetically dangerous in the superstition?
Both. You never do that. You always give them a brand new name or
Okay,
or or something that you or name that you liked or the Chinese characters that you liked having special strong name. Yeah. So my daughter's name is like her first Chinese character is a flower, and her second name is a phoenix. A phoenix, beautiful flower that was born in during the sakura during the sakura hana flowers coming out. So that would be the springtime, and the second part of her name is like a phoenix. A phoenix would never die; it always reappears and comes back again, right? So that's
right.
a flower and a phoenix. But that's the names that we use. We always check out the characters and how many characters there are in the first name, and does it coincide with the last name? And depending on how many Chinese characters in it, it could mean like a negative number would be 14 or a 4. So you always have to check out how many characters in it because if it's a really negative character, it means that the child could die really young from an illness or whatever. So that's how superstitious we are, and that's how careful we are. That's why you'll never see the number 4 in this country.
Interesting.
This,
Just like we don't have 13 in a
yeah.
lot of places.
But my son was born
Amanda
in
was going to ask something. Um, I
my
think
son
we.
was born July 13th on a Friday too.
Yeah, I was gonna say four is definitely that's one thing we're taught here is like you said in back in America you don't have the 13th floor. You some some places also don't have like the 13th room. They just skip it. Here it is four for that same reason. Is the word four is also the same word as like death.
Yeah.
So there's elevators where it goes 1, 2, 3, 5
Hmm.
or 12, 13, 15.
Yeah.
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 I've
But
seen
see,
Not
that.
to
13 is
make
not a
light
bad
of it.
number.
Yeah, not to make light of 4 being death, but it was like as you were saying that, my mind like kind of made the joke of, I wonder how many, I wonder if that explains why golf isn't so popular in Japan because you got the yell 4.
Yeah, it's kind
Koreans
of
get
weird.
four as well. Yeah,
Yeah,
could be the same reason.
the people do play golf too. For it means she, and four in Japanese means death. So that's why Shinigami, the Shinigami, the death goddess, or anything that has to do with death is usually used the word four in it, then or the letter four in it. Um, but 13 is not 13 is very lucky here. I'm wondering.
Yeah.
I wonder why that's why my son sees a lot of spirits. I wonder why that's why he's gifted because he was born Friday the 13th and it was on the 13th and it was 1 o'clock in the afternoon. That's weird. And everyone says, and when somebody says, when is your son's birthday? Friday the July 13th. What day was he born? On a Friday. You go, you're kidding. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting, talking about the superstitions and the numbers and their
Yeah.
meanings is Buddhist, I know a high vibrancy number is
Mm-hmm.
666.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go to like Catholicism, they're like, "Oh, that is the ultimate worst number." And it's funny how
Mm-hmm.
you have two diverse sides of
Mm-hmm.
the same issue, and it's like, yeah, and it's people like I get. I kind of wonder if it's out of fear, and so they're like afraid of something. So they're like, "Hey, let's make it this, so people don't
Mm-hmm.
gravitate to this, and we can keep them focused here more." Why they steal certain information and then twist it to fit their needs.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, isn't it? And then for my birthday, it's even worse. I'm born the same day that we have the Day of the Dead in Japan. So we feed the dead when the dead come home. It's on my birthday. So I'm going, Mom, why was that happen? They go, well, I don't know. And I'm wondering that's probably why I work with spirits because we practice the Day of the Dead in Japan, right? So it's kind of okay. That's weird.
Yeah, but look on the bright side, Irene. You'll always have your favorite foods available.
I don't think we're feeding pizza to the dead here.
Hey, you
it's
never know.
it's usually sticky rice with sweet bean paste. That's what we feed the dead people here. And yeah, after my birthday, we say, okay, you gotta go home. Bye. Like you gotta kick them out of your house.
Yeah.
So
So
it's the most haunted month of the year. And where Amanda is, it's August the 25th, 24th, 25th, and 26th. So that's when the most celebrations come out, where they have dancing. They dance in the streets, or they bring out the shrine, and they appease the dead in
yeah,
Japan
so
on that time.
not to sound disrespectful to the Day of the Dead and all that, but I'm curious, and Amanda, I'm curious your take too. Is what happens to the food after? Like if it's still wherever you placed it for that person and the day's over, what do you do with that food?
We eat it.
Really?
You're not supposed to let it rot. You're supposed to eat it.
Huh, I've never heard that part. I always hear you leave the food out for the dead and then nobody ever says what to do with it after.
But you see, you can bring the food to the grave, right? But you're supposed to enjoy the food with the dead person at the gravesite.
See, I like that idea better because it's like you're
Picnic in
having
the
a meal with
cemetery.
them.
Yeah.
Well, having a meal with your loved one instead of going and leaving a plate and then walking away and going, okay,
You
this was
can
a
leave a place
celebration.
and walk away, but actually you bring enough for the dead, your family too. So everyone gets one each. And you
Is
enjoy it.
reincarnation a belief in Japan, Irene? I haven't really studied too much on
So is
there.
reincarnation a given a belief in Japan? If some people died, they were born after. Yeah, yeah. Especially if you died from an illness, or if you died from a painful memory and you don't want to live anymore, you can be reborn as a different soul. Um, or if you're let's put it that way in a negative way. If you were born as a human being, you did something really bad to another person, you come back as a steer and be slaughtered and beaten by people. That's what
So,
they
fun
believe.
fact, going to the wildlife will benefit or share the wildlife. The Japanese government doesn't actually want you feeding wildlife. Like here in Japan, there is actually more in the whole country itself. There is more wildcats than there are people 16 and under.
Hmm.
That's how much of a issue it is here. So I looked that up about the wildcats, and they say there is more wildcats out there you see out in the streets or wherever than there are people 16 and under in the whole entire country.
Yeah.
And there's signs everywhere that says "Do not feed the cats."
Hmm. Yeah. And there
Yeah.
are jungle cats too in Japan also, and all of Asia too.
And what's interesting to me is, talking about like the UFOs and all of that, is recently someone pointed out, and I don't know if you two have done this, if you take the Forbidden City in China and take an aerial view, it looks like a computer circuit.
Mm.
And it's like, and I can't help but, it's like when you look at that and look at now how we're learning all the sacred temples are laid out to
Mm.
constellations.
Hmm.
It's like, could there be a significance why they laid that out to look like a computer circuit?
Yeah, that's unbelievable. There are a lot of technology here in Japan too, where they made human body parts, well, human, yeah, body parts too, um, and organs in a laboratory. And where did that technology come from, right? I don't think it was developed by humans. I think it was developed by more from out there, right?
Right. Yeah.
So why would be able to have this technology? Who gave it to us, right? Because the thing the Japanese samurai sword was given by an alien too. They give the way to know how to make one.
Right. Because they learned how to fold it to where I think legend has it that there's a sword that was, I think it was even a katana
Mhm.
that was folded like 2,000 times, and no
Mhm.
one's been able to, like, the most anyone can do now is like 400 folds before it
Mhm.
starts failing and
Yeah.
getting too
Yeah.
brittle. So it's like, wait, how did in the ancient days did they know better
Yeah.
than today's day of folding metal?
And they don't wear regular clothes when they do that. They have to wear a white kimono.
Right.
When you wear a white kimono, you in when you're born you wear white. When you're dead you wear white also.
And I think too they have that white bandana around,
Mm. Mhm.
and that's the
Yeah.
only. And I think they wear, and that's all they wear. Everything else is like bare.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's mostly very sacred when they do that. And they don't have anybody else in the room when they do that. There's usually three people only: the ones who's helping them, the ones who's holding the metal, and the ones who's pounding it wears white. You.
And what's interesting too is depending on the number of folds
Mhm.
determines the song of the sword, because they
Mhm.
found
Mhm.
each sword of the ancient times rang a certain frequency tone.
Yeah, and they consider the sword a part of them. So it's a part of their soul, right?
Right.
So that's what it means. So that's why you find a lot of swords who were taken by Japanese family during after the war by soldiers are haunted, and they
Yeah.
don't know what to do with it. So this thing is so haunted, they don't know what to do with it. The best thing to do is give it back to the country, right?
Well,
And
or the owners if they're
yeah,
around.
yeah, and the country would find the owners that particular way. They they'd have records of people in the family records in certain areas have all family records, right, dating back to whenever. So they'd have that. So they would be able to find the family by reaching out to a historical society in Japan. So that's what they would do. But don't keep the sword some foreign country because it doesn't belong to you, right? And it could do pretty bad harm to you if you keep it.
Right, because especially if it wants to be home,
Yeah,
it'll start vibrating and start causing.
trouble in the
Yeah,
family, right? So it could unalive you too if you're not careful. So that's one thing that I really am against is like um there are some paranormal groups in America that says that we have this haunted Japanese sword. Yeah, we have to keep it this and this and this. I said, why don't you give it back? And I didn't say anything, but yeah, I should have
yeah.
said something, but I really wanted to say something about it. And I said, that's not
Well,
right.
the other thing too is the Japanese, if I'm not mistaken, display the swords in a very specific way that honors
Yeah.
the creator and the family.
Hmm. Yeah,
And if you don't do that, then the sword gets upset. And
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
these swords are almost, in essence, living entities.
yeah. It
And
has a
so you
soul,
got
it
to
has a
think about
body.
that.
Yeah, it has a soul, it has a body, it has a life of its own, right?
And I've even heard stories, and I don't know if you two have heard these, of even in battle, if somebody went to strike somebody in battle and the sword did not agree, it would not allow you to strike.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah,
I've heard stories like that where,
yeah.
yeah.
If there's one place where not too far from where Amanda lives is in Hiroshima, they have a castle, okay, but the castle got destroyed during the atomic bomb. But the castle contains several museum pieces of haunted swords. I mean, I went there. I think I told the story on this program. I went there. I looked at the swords. I got sick to my stomach. I had a stomach ache. I didn't feel good. Like I got dizzy and I nearly moved my cookies. And I said, yeah, I can't stand here. I gotta go and sit over there. Yeah, you can look there. I told my husband, you can walk around there. It's okay. He's not touchy feely like me, I am, so he can walk around and see things. And I said, I gotta go and sit down. "Well, I don't feel good." And he goes, "Why?" I said, "Yeah, I saw the sword being stabbed by another person in the gut, and its innards are ripped out of him." And I said, "Yeah, I can't do this. I can't do. I can't do this." I was turning green, and my husband, "You're white as a sheet." I said, "I know. I gotta sit down. Can I just move over there and sit down?" I said, "I don't feel so good." And they were some historical swords that were used back when, right? And
Right.
oh,
There's
I
even
don't,
stories of, I think it was two of the top at the time in ancient Japan in the
mhm,
feudal age,
mhm,
where they killed somebody with the sword that they weren't supposed to,
mhm.
and as soon as they were done, the sword shattered.
Yeah.
And they had to then go through retraining their mind, their
Mhm,
body,
mhm. Yeah.
and the sword to get it to fuse back together and
Mhm.
have someone be able to fix the sword. It wasn't a simple task of
No,
go to your
bringing it all
blacksmith and
together and
say,
melting it
"Hey,
and melting it and creating another sword. You can't do that. You'd have to have a monk pray on the sword and have release the energy of the sword. It's a special monk that does that. Like
right,
not all Buddhist monks are able to help you if you live in a haunted place. That's that's another part of the story that's totally different, right? So you have certain special monks that would help you, and not every monk is the same way in Japan too. So yeah, it's just totally different, right?
yeah." So, I mean, to me, that just is another way of showing the soul of the swords is,
Yeah,
if you go against their wish, they'll
Yeah.
let you know by either stopping you or breaking, and
Or
it's
you
not
getting
easy to
injured,
fix.
or you getting injured in the midst of doing something, right?
Yeah, it could turn on you. There
Yeah.
is, there
Yeah.
was once fighter who did have his sword turn on him and stabbed him instead.
Yeah. And it could outlive you too. It could kill you too. So you have to be very careful about it. That's why they treat their swords very carefully in this country.
Yeah, and it's not a simple task of like saying, "Okay, son, we're now handing down the family sword to you." As no, you got to be trained to
Yeah.
use it, to
Yeah.
wield it,
Yeah.
to take care of it,
Yeah.
and accept it. It's not a simple
No.
like here in America. We just are like, okay, here's your inheritance.
Yeah.
No, it's not that easy with swords.
No. And and like swords, they say swords have a soul, and they do have a soul. So like everything else, like it's almost like, here, son, here's my gun. I'm gonna give it to you. Right? You can't do
Right.
that. Yeah. It's just impossible to do that, right? Even an arrow, like here they use arrows, a bow and arrow too, in the past too. So the bow and arrow would have the same effect as a sword would too.
Right. Each arrow was unique because each samurai or soldier would tie the feather a
Mm-hmm.
very specific way so that they would know if they were the one responsible for that death or
Mm-hmm.
not.
Yep. Yep.
And that's a misnomer too, is people viewed it in a lot of foreigners when they would go would say, "Oh, that guy's the most skilled. He's got the most kills because he collected the most arrows." And it's like that's not how that operated.
No.
He
No.
had the most prayers to do after to
Mm-hmm.
beg forgiveness for taking so many lives.
Yep. Yep. That's why in this country, after you, like, especially what I do, I have to go and get cleansed every time I do something. Every time I I conduct a session with the spirit, I have to get cleansed. I have to go to a Shinto priest, and I have to ask the gods to cleanse me every time I do something big, or I do something haunted, or before I go to a haunted area, I have to get cleansed. That's why I'm going. That's why I'm going on June 25th, 24th, and 25th. I'm going to get cleansed, and it's a very important ritual that I do that, because if something bad happened to you, you have to go and get cleansed too.
Yeah,
So it's just like, you want to get rid of whatever happened to you, or you want to get rid of something bad that happened to you, or you want to help you from getting sick, or from being sick too much to help you, so you could get rid of that bad juju and come out again and be able to do something again. Then you go back and get cleansed again, right? It's just a regular ritual that we do, and yeah, it's extremely important.
huh. Do you do that ritual too, Amanda, or do you have your own?
No. I mean, I'm still learning the ones, but I'm still learning about the culture over here because I more studied here the urban legends and stuff here. That's actually how I started in Japanese paranormal, is doing a TikTok about urban legends of Japan.
Hmm.
Culture wise, I'm still learning. I don't know the in depth ones that Irene does, but I have gone to like the Buddhist temples and had them do like their cleansing thing, but it's not really in depth as what she does.
Yeah.
It's more of you go there and they have their own incense sticks, whatever. I don't know the proper name for it, but
uh
it doesn't really have a scent to it. It's just more of a, they made it purely to cleanse you. Like they don't use sage, so I guess it's their version of sage.
no.
Because you can't really find sage here either, because it's not. something that they really believe in.
No.
So like I can't. If I want sage, I'd have to order online or have someone ship it to me.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, going into like the Buddhist temple and having them with their little incense sticks cleanse
Yeah.
with the smoke cleanse your body, I guess,
Yeah.
or cleanse your aura or whatever energy.
It's called Osenko.
Like I can't ever remember the name. I'm just like I've done it before where you light it, you cleanse it, and you stick it into the thing with their ash in it, and then you just kind of also to make
Bring
sure
the
you got it.
ashes towards you. Like
Yeah,
Right.
if you're in pain, you bring it towards where you're in pain. If you need a clear head, you bring it towards your head to clear your mind. If you have sore legs, you bring it towards the smoke towards your legs or to a certain part of your body that needs cleansing. That's what they do it. But I mean, it's a little bit different. My religion, it's not a religion. It's not a belief. It's just something that I do for my ancestors. I go to a Shinto shrine and I go in the temple where you usually don't go unless you're a certain member, and then you get blessed by the Shinto priest. That's what I do. It's a big ritual that I do every time, and it's my mother's ancestors that built this shrine on a mountain, which was also created by aliens too. So how can you get a shrine? How can you get the wood, the heavy wood up the mountain? They're wondering that. And it looks like a friggin' step mountain. I tell you. I mean, if you look at Paranormal Japan, it's my group. You, my picture of that shrine is on the mountain. You have to climb up these certain amount of steps to get up the mountain. It's a hassle too, because by the time you get there, you go like this. But yeah, it's way up the mountain. On the other side is a cliff, and the cliff is on the other side. It's a Pacific Ocean. It's nowhere where I live. It's on the western part of 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 this city, so it's in a different district. We could call it different state, different province, or whatever you could call it. We call it prefecture. So yeah, it's the other side of the cliff where the Pacific Ocean is, and it looks like a forest actually, to tell you the truth, and it's also haunted too on the other side of it. So it's really ancient and really old. So I want to go to that haunted area too. So I just want to see how it looks like right on that part because I've been there. That's why I want to drag a man and go. Let's go get blessed, and we'll go to the haunted area in this place where I know where my shrine is. And he goes, and I haven't told her that yet. Sorry, man, I haven't told you that yet. But yeah, I want to go there. It's just a new area. It's just where the shrine is. It's they have a lot of weird haunted areas because a lot of samurai warriors will kind of like dig the kind of certain type of battles there, and yeah, it's supposed to be really freaky, creepy, but for me, freaky, creepy means really interesting, right? I have a different view of creepy. There's creepy and there's real creepy, right? That's
Right.
one of the creepies I think is really cool, creepy to me. That's why I want to take Amanda there, and I'm gonna just take a look at it from a
Yeah. It's like
distance.
when I was on an interview with a lady in the UK
Hmm.
and Scotland, actually, and we were talking about, yeah, we enjoy investigating jails. And I said, yeah, it's funny in America where everybody wants to stay out of jail. But as paranormal investigators, we're like, no, we want to go in. We want to go to the jail just to investigate. Let's clarify. We don't want to become permanent residents.
No.
We just want to visit and investigate. And it's like, it's funny how a lot of the places where people are like, I want nothing to do with that. The paranormal investigators are like, let me go. Let me
Yeah.
loose. Send me.
Here you want to think twice before doing that, right? Because we still have the death penalty, right? And they still do it by hanging here, okay? Once the person has been put to death, they're hung, their body would be cremated, right? And their remains would be thrown in the forest. And there's one forest that's supposed to be that they use to do this. And I haven't got the name of the forest yet, but it's kind of interesting to research that one where they just throw the ashes in the forest. And it's got to be littered with a whole bunch of bones and, ashes, right? It'd be
I
interesting
would
to find
say
out.
so. And
I mean, I don't know if I'd go there because of the energy, but it'd be interesting just to research it, right?
and the other thing too would be because, especially if they were doing it in feudal times, the
Mm-hmm.
different caste, like if you had a high caste hierarchy person's ashes mixed with a low caste, you got to be thinking those spirits are sitting there going, wait, why are you here? And the other
Yeah,
one's like, what makes you think you're better than me? You're here too. And, you
yeah,
got that going on.
yeah. It's just because the families don't want. They'll be ashamed to the family to make bring them and bury them in their plots. So they said, yeah, we don't want their ashes. We just get rid of it. So that's what the families would do. So they don't want their body, right? So unless you have special permission from the government that you ask to have their body, their remains, you can do that. But if most families don't, if one of the family members created a crime, so the ashes would be spent thrown in the forest because nobody wants them. And that forest, I haven't found the name of it yet. I want to do some research about it, but I don't think anybody higher would be done that way. It's just if you're a criminal and you did crimes and you're sentenced to death, that's what happened to you, right?
Yeah, that could be. And Joshua is funny because he says can't afford X or space track. That yeah,
Yeah.
that's becoming a thing now. And the states is you can book a shuttle ride for your deceased ashes and release them into space. And it's like part of me is like, have we run out of so much space on our planet that we're now filling space with our loved ones, or it's
Yeah. I think there's so much junk in space now with junk parts from from satellites and everything else. Like it's just full of junk, right?
I
junk that
know,
we made,
yeah,
the junk that we made. So yeah, I mean, now we're polluting the space, right?
yeah, and I mean it's funny because it's like we think about all the old satellites and old
Yeah.
debris of ships and stations up there that
Mhm.
just gets discarded, and eventually the orbit will decay and it falls back to the planet. So really, we are still junking up the planet, but
Yeah.
the hope
That's why
is
we want to
it
go. That's
burns.
why people are saying we want to go elsewhere outside the planet. I said, so you're gonna jump up Earth so you can go elsewhere and junk that one up too, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
It's just like, yeah. When will it stop? Yeah. When will you guys learn not to do that anymore? But yeah, it's kind of.
I'm waiting for cemeteries and places to be like the ones here in Japan where you don't have your own individual plot, you have a family plot,
Hmm.
and they just cremate you down to the bones, and you're in a ceramic pot, and you're placed you're above ground, but you're still like in your own little place in a grave in a ceramic pot. and the front of it will have like your last name. Then the
Mhm.
back of it will have like the family members whose bones are in that little grave.
And it's encased in marble, so they can remove the caulking of the grave and put another pot in it, so it can be like, oh, like your husband would buy a plot, so his wife will be in it. The children who grow up and die will be in the same plot, so the ancestors would take care of the plot. And buying a plot is like $30,000.
You know, it's interesting you bring that up, Amanda, because to me, it's like the next step I would think is in conserving land is instead of having everybody in their individual pots, be like everyone's now going to be in one pot.
Mm-hmm. Well, everyone dies at a different year, right? So that's why they're in their own pots.
Right, but what I'm meaning is they're going to take, because they need the space, and go, okay, instead of having these 10 pots now, we're going to put one centralized pot, and when the next person dies, we're just going to add them to this pot, and the
Yeah.
next person, and the next person. So your family is going to be truly family,
Mm-hmm.
and I hope you all love each other because
I was
you're
gonna
going to
say
be
you better
mixed
pick your
together.
family wisely.
Yeah. Yeah.
At least the ones you marry into, because
Yeah.
you're spending all eternity with that married family.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if you got buried with them over your own family.
Yeah. So it would be like my husband's family would be in the same plot as me. Mine say, I don't want to be with your father. I don't want to be with your mother. Like, I don't want to be with my in-laws.
Yeah.
But having a plot is very expensive, right? So you just
It
can't
is.
bury one person in. So, and
That's why a lot of people are starting to do the cremation,
yeah,
because you don't have to spend it on the lot, and you can just spread the ashes in certain places with permissions.
yeah.
Yeah, but now you can also do stuff with the ashes, like have it turned into diamonds for your family members.
Yeah.
Yeesh. I don't know if I could do that. Yeesh. I don't know if
Some
I
people do that though, where I've heard stuff where they'll get a diamond, turns out it was grandma.
could.
Yeah.
And would that be haunted too? You're wondering, right?
I've always wondered that because it's starting to become it's a newer thing, and
Mm-hmm.
it's starting to become more of a thing with people. But I've always wondered if you're wearing a diamond with like I'm gonna assume grandma or great grandma or whoever. I always wondered if that's gonna be haunted or not.
You know, I would venture to say no, because it's your loved one. So, I mean, unless this person is being, that you're with, is treating you horribly,
Mm-hmm.
I would think your relatives will be happy. So, not really acting out, but that's just my personal take of, yeah, if the family approves of the guy or the gal, you should have no issues. But if they start mistreating you, then yeah, I'm sure family is going to start sticking up for family and being like, yep, you need to
Yeah,
straighten out or you're going to be visited by us on a whole nother level.
Yeah.
this is how I feel. I feel like it would have that person's energy, and that's why I'd be so iffy about wearing a diamond of was made from someone's ashes. My biggest also fear though is one day I'm gonna buy a piece of jewelry and find and not know it was someone else's grandma in that
Mm.
diamond.
Well, here's the twist to it too, Amanda, is you're hoping the company is reputable.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, when they say this is grandma, it's grandma and it's not somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's true too. And you would know from a jeweler that if it's real or if it's made from ashes, like a man-made piece, you'd know because the jeweler could tell you if it's real or not.
Yeah, but
Because
can
if
you
you don't
imagine that
buy
jeweler's face going, This is not a real diamond. This is someone's ashes going, their face of, did you know?
Yeah, but I'm saying if you buy it for like an estate sale or even a garage sale, you think this is a
Yeah,
cheap piece of jewelry, and
yeah.
you end up buying it because you think it's nice. You're not gonna immediately take it to a jeweler. You're gonna wear it for a while, thinking, "Oh, I want a nice piece of cheap jewelry. I'm gonna wear this." And it turns out
Oh,
it's their grandma.
you see, my husband was a jeweler. Okay, so first thing what I do, I was take it to a jeweler and have it appraised. That's what I would do.
Not
So I think
everyone does that though.
I'm a
Yeah.
little different, right? I work a little bit differently.
Yeah,
That's
especially if there's like a family crest to it, then you really gotta wonder what's in the crest.
yeah. That's interesting too. In Japan, people don't notice it, but even you're supposed to witness the cremation of your loved one. Okay, you're supposed to go to the crematorium. You're supposed to be watching them as they get cremated, and the Buddhist priest is saying, chanting prayers as they do it. Um, Pets, you're supposed to be witnessing your pet being cremated too. So it's and like I said, at the funeral, you put the bones in a clay pot using long chopsticks, right? That's why you never had a piece of food with your chopstick and another person taking it from their chopstick. You never do that because that's the only thing you do in the funeral, right? So it's just there are rules and regulations with eating too, and you just don't do certain things because you'll get you're not supposed to do that. Like yeah,
Yeah.
but it's kind of morbid watching your pet being cremated. I just don't.
Yeah, I couldn't do it.
I don't do that, and I don't like watching somebody else being cremated. Like I had to go to several family funerals on my husband's side, and I always end up leaving the room and sitting on a chair someplace else because I don't like watching it. I don't like being there. And I'm saying, no, not gonna do this. Not gonna go there because the first time I did, I had nightmares right through the whole week, and I couldn't sleep all night. I go, ooh, that it just creeped me out. I think it was a shock to my system because, yeah, first time I had to see it, and I went like this, and I said, I can't do this. And I couldn't
You
sleep
know,
for.
I just had an interesting thought pop in my head of we do the jewelry or different, like you could do spires or that light up or different things with people's ashes,
Hmm.
but nobody does anything like that for the pets.
You can buy. I've heard of companies doing it where you can send the ashes to get
I got
your
this.
pet also a diamond.
My cat died in March. She was kind of old, so I have her one of her bones and her finger and her nail claw in it, and they give you can places will make you pay for this keepsake, and this one I got free. You could choose any color you want, right?
Yeah, it's just I was thinking like when you go to places to cremate your pets, they don't hand you a flyer and being like, hey, you can have your pet, turned into this piece of jewelry or
No, they
this,
don't.
like you see with your family members. And it's like, I was just realizing and thinking, man, that's kind of harsh that we don't do that.
No,
And at the same time, though, imagine if you had a cat that your partner hated
yeah,
that passes on and you create a ring and you give it to him and he's going to get scratched up every time with that ring and be like, what is up with this ring? And finally say, well, remember our family member that you really hated? You're wearing him.
yeah. Like here, pets are like humans. They're not cremated to the bone. They're not cremated to the ashes, so they don't grind the bones to ashes here. they keep it in a bone form, right?
Okay.
So that's what they do. So the clay pots would have the skull all intact. It would be a big clay pot about this big, right?
Yeah.
And they sit on it, and they put all
Ooh,
yeah.
here's a good one, Amanda and Irene.
Ooh.
Imagine if you feel like your loved one that really disliked, say, your cat,
Mhm.
and he dies of mysterious causes. You could
Mhm.
make it into a piece of jewelry and give it to him and be like, karmic retribution. You make your peace with him because you're wearing him.
Mm.
Yeah, that'd be cool. It'd be creepy and cool.
You
like
just give it to
uh,
him, never tell him.
Yeah.
like revenge.
And watch it be like, why is my arm getting these mysterious scratch marks? And it'd be like, I don't know, honey.
Like what? Why am I seeing this thing come after me at nighttime? Or why is this walking around my house? Right?
And what's worse is imagine if he like went to take it off and it wouldn't come off.
Oh no.
Ooh.
Be like, oh, that ring is stuck on you until you make peace.
Wasn't there something like that? It was an object that was cursed. It was given to his wife, and that she couldn't take off the ring. If she took off the ring, she'd die.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, that happened, didn't it? Right, long time ago, right?
It did. I don't know
Oh
whatever came of that ring, but
no, I don't know whatever happened to the wife either.
I think she eventually took it off because otherwise she'd still be walking around.
Yeah, that'd be really. That's interesting too.
I mean, so what do you guys think about like the legends of like say Dorian Gray, where he had the painting that aged until it was destroyed, and then he aged and caught up? Have
Hmm.
you heard of those?
No, I have heard of. I mean, like there's haunted paintings where, and I'm sure you've probably heard of this haunted painting where I want to say the painting of two kids, and they say every time they pass by it, sometimes they'll be like, because there's like a kind of like a glass door behind them, and
Mhm.
sometimes you see other handprints on the door, sometimes you don't, or sometimes you see the kids in the painting moved a little bit. They had weird things happening at night where and they set up cameras and they swore they saw like the spirit of the boy running down the hallway.
Yeah, I think paintings do carry some energy, and I think they can be
Mhm.
very, um, yeah, wrong Dorian there, Joshua.
Um.
But this was it, the legend was that he wanted to be immortal, and so the curse was he had this painting made that would age instead of him, so he was living hundreds of years.
Ooh.
And I believe the curse was either the painting was destroyed or he looked at the painting.
Mhm.
Then age would catch up with him,
Mhm.
and the legend goes that he finally looked at his painting and turned to dust because he was like so many hundreds of years old that they were like, yeah, you'd be nothing but dust.
That's weird. That's kind of interesting, but
I'm gonna have to
creepy.
look that one up.
Yeah, there are like there are artists here that paint haunted paintings of spirits and stuff like that. People don't want them in their house because they're kind of like freaky, superstitious people, and I don't have anything like that in my house either. But a lot of people who are interested in right like them and do hang them in their house.
Yeah,
Um, it's like, yeah, they're not married anymore, right? They're kind of like divorced and single by now, right? People who do have them, but yeah, they are creepy. They're not for sale. The thing is, that you can't find them anywhere. And you can't find lithographs of them either. It's just like, where do you find them, right?
Right, and I'm curious if Japan ever went through the phase. Sorry, that I think went through Victorian England. I think did it, and America did it for a while, where when your loved one died, you would pay to have a photograph where you're all standing together as a family,
Yeah,
and they
see
were
those
either
photos.
sitting in a chair or standing with you and being photographed with the deceased.
I've never heard that of that here.
They did that with family members. Then I've seen a lot of those pictures. They did it mostly also with children, I believe. Like if your child
Yeah.
died,
Right.
you'd get the one last family photo with them where they dress the kid up.
Uh,
You just do that one last family photo.
Yeah.
yeah.
And I've even heard of some of the photos where they said that the kid looked so bad that they actually were paid to put makeup on to make him look better.
Ooh.
And it's like, yeah, that's even creepier when you look at this deceased kid with makeup on to make
Yeah.
him look real. Hey, Nikki.
Yeah.
Luckily, it was black and white photography at the time, not color,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but still.
It's really creepy, isn't it? When they have to do that. Here, you'd have a family photo at the at the at, at the cremation place, right? And everyone would stand together and have and take a picture of everybody at the funeral place. But to me, even that's creepy.
Yeah.
And I never took a picture, but I know people would take pictures and put it in their photo album. When after Granddad got cremated, there's everybody together in the photograph, and they'd have the family photo. Because the only time when people would take time out is for a wedding and a funeral, right?
Right.
So they'd have that, and they put it in their photo album. And I bet you they're friggin' haunted too, you know?
Oh, I bet. And talking about the cremations and everything and funerals, I was watching on TikTok and one of the videos that popped up was Jeff Dunham. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if you guys are familiar with him, a ventriloquist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And one of the puppets goes, "Oh, you should totally go to a funeral and be sitting there, and while everyone's sitting there crying over him, use your voice to go, 'Hey, I'm not dead,' and watch
Oh,
everyone freak out." And I was like, that would be so wrong.
I'm trying.
or
I
let
want
me
to. I
out.
feel like that was Walter who said that.
I think it might have been more of Ahmed.
It could have
Yeah.
been Ahmed, yeah, because he does jokes like that too, though.
It would be kind of creepy saying, "Let me out of here, let me out of here."
Yeah. You're like, "Hey, I didn't die yet. I'm sorry, I was asleep."
Yeah.
Watch everybody like faint and pass out.
Like what? Like, ooh, yeah. Or start running out of the room, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, wouldn't be able to do that. Nope. Nope, 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 nope. Sorry, nope. Yeah, but I mean,
To be one way to get banned from every family funeral.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Be like, I don't want to go to any more funerals. So what can I
no,
do?
yeah.
Let me learn ventriloquism.
Oh gosh, oh heck, no, it's that one.
And the
Mm.
worst thing to do too would be is if you think about it, be like, say you're in Japan attending a funeral and then you start throwing out in Spanish, "I'm not dead yet," and be like everyone freaking out going, "When did Grandpa learn Spanish?"
Ooh
Who has
dear.
taken over Grandpa now?
Ooh, yeah. I think that's why in Japan, to make sure a person's truly dead, you have a 24-hour period pass by. So you have to be, it's called Tsuya in Japan, where you have 24 hours. So you have to make sure you have to be in the same room. You don't have to be in the same room. You have to bring the body home, right? You put him on on a futon, and you lay them down, and you dress them, or people take them to a, a place where they held funerals, and they dress them, and you have to be with them 24 hours to make sure they're dead.
Yeah. They that's why in Victorian England they developed the bell
Yeah,
that's tied to the grave
yeah,
because people were being buried alive because they would
yeah,
have sleep paralysis or
yeah,
something that would
yeah,
make
yeah,
people think they were dead and they
yeah,
weren't.
yeah. And I think that's why you will see less. Um, the card you can fill out when you're dead, that you can give organ donations. That's the way they
Right.
don't have that here. You only can, even if you fill out a card that say you can give your organs after you died. It's really not. It's without the realms of the law, and the doctor cannot touch your organs, because it's not permitted religiously by Buddhist practices, or is it permitted by the doctors allowed to touch you? They're not allowed to touch you.
So
Um,
basically, if you need a transplant, you have to go to America and spend
yeah, yeah,
money.
yeah, and that's why a lot of people in Japan who need transplants go to America, because only live donations are allowed. Like, you can give part of your liver to a donor, a family member, but you cannot take somebody's who just died and donate their organs to anybody. It's not allowed.
I think that's a good rule because I personally am of the field, and I don't know how you are, Amanda, is if I give an organ to somebody,
Hmm.
I am giving a part of my soul and essence to that person. So I am forever linked now to that person.
Hmm.
So I'm like, I'm kind of, I hate to say it, but I'm against organ sharing because
Hmm.
I don't want to take on somebody else's life karma
Hmm.
to save my life because
Hmm.
I don't know what that person's been through. And
It has
part of,
been there has been cases where someone got someone from someone else's got body transplant, whatever it was. All of a
Hmm.
sudden, started getting these people's memories. There has
yeah,
been
Yeah.
those cases. They actually went to go talk to the family member. Turns out it was actual real memories that they're
Hmm.
having of that person.
Hmm.
So it's like they lived like two different lives because they still had
Hmm.
all the memories from the person they got the whatever organ they got. But there was also there's also been one study where not really study. There was one case where someone got an organ from someone who passed away and passed who unalived himself.
Hmm.
He got that he got one he got a transplant from him. He ended up marrying the person's widow, and
Hmm.
he unalived himself the exact same way as the person he got the organ from.
yeah.
That.
And there's also cases of like when before they get an organ transplant, say they hate Italian food. After the transplant, they're like living on Italian food.
Yeah.
It's like their personalities, their
I've heard of that.
tastes, and a lot of things change.
Yeah.
And they say, oh, that's, there's no science to prove that's because of this or that. But I'm like, eh, that's because I think that's on a much higher, different level.
Yeah.
Science is saying, yeah, your body's rejecting this, or, oh, it's normal, just it's a phase.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
How do you
There's got to be
can't
something
explain?
behind it, but you see, they don't want to research that area, right? Because it's
Right.
kind of like a taboo, right?
Right.
And
we're on this side, on the paranormal side, but yeah, it's taboo, but we're saying why? Like we have this big question mark, right? And I think we're the only ones who are saying why, and why isn't everybody else saying why? But they don't want it. They just yeah, we won't want to talk about it, right? But
Yeah.
we're the only ones who are talking about these why things, and why isn't anybody else thinking about that? They said nope, 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 nope. It's just it's just I think we're the only ones that are open
Yeah.
to.
And
There's also been a case where someone got an organ from someone who's bilingual, and this person who received it never spoke another language, but all of a sudden, once they got that organ transplant, they started speaking that language fluently too. They're like,
Yeah,
"How do you just one day wake up and know another language?" I mean, I wish I
yeah.
could wake up and know another language fluently.
yeah, and to piggyback what you were saying, Amanda, about the relationship where he married the widow,
Mhm.
I could see mentally being like so distraught because you're like, am I really in love with this person, or is it the organ that I got that's in love with them?
Mhm.
And I'm not, but they are. And so it's like, it can be a really huge mind warp of, are you really feeling what you're feeling, or are you feeling what they're feeling? In which case, you're doing more harm to the
Mhm.
other person. So I could
So
It's
they
see
end
why
up
you would react that way.
it's like a conflict, isn't it? Conflict of
Yeah.
interest.
they
And
unalive themselves the exact same way that the person got the organ from did. So that's even. I'm like that also has to be so much worse on that widow. You're a widow twice, the exact same
yeah.
method as that he did.
And it'd almost be interesting to scientifically take the organ that was donated to another person and
Mhm.
see if it happens a third time and be like, and say, okay, science, you cannot tell me it's not attached to the organ
Mhm.
if it's happened now a third time.
Another weird thing is going on. I don't think any of you guys know about it unless you're from this side of the Pacific Ocean. Is that in China they jail you for frivolous crime? The only reason why is because they need your organs, right?
Right.
So you be in front of a shooting squad, and they have a doctor harvesting your organs as soon as you're shot
Yeah.
and selling it on the black market.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah. So that's still happening even in China, even to this day.
There's even cases where people are attacked on the streets and they wake up and they're in like an ice bath or something, and they're like, yeah, organs have been stolen from them because
Yeah.
people need it. And the one thing, though, I gotta say that I find interesting about that is organs are to certain blood types. You
Mhm.
can't just take
Yeah.
a kidney and
Mhm.
throw it in someone.
Yeah.
So who is got a hold of the list of who is what
Mhm.
to make you a target? It's like, how did they get that information?
Yeah.
Because
It's
yeah,
yeah.
there's no way it's just an accident that you were picked and you're missing a kidney now or two.
Yeah.
It's
And I
like,
think more for me, it'd be more difficult for me because I'm AB positive, okay? So is my husband, so is my daughter, and so is my oldest son. I mean, it's got like 4%, right? Of the population, right?
yeah,
It has the same blood type. And that's why I was never, when I lived in Canada, that's why I was never, my brother refused for me to get a driver's license because if I had an accent, I wouldn't be able to get a transfusion from anybody, right? And
when I was growing up, when I was going to high school, I gave blood for the Red Cross for the first time, and I'd be rushed to the hospital in an ambulance because somebody needed open heart surgery. That's how bad it was for me.
Yeah.
And in high school, I was the only person who had AB positive. My other friend had AB negative, and there was only one, me and my friend. We were the only people who had the same blood type, but one was positive. I was positive. She was negative, and so it's really difficult for me because I can't do like I don't even go out on my bicycle anymore on the streets anymore since I moved to Tokyo, because there's more traffic and it's more hectic and it's scary as hell for me. So I don't like going to the grocery store. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's too freaky, right? So I mean, getting a body parts for me was the most difficult thing for me, right?
Definitely. And yeah, and uh, there are so many things right now that are going on that it's really difficult to sit there and say, the paranormal, for example,
Yeah.
is I was talking with a friend and was, sitting there saying, you probably are more into the paranormal than you realize. And they're like, no, I am
Mhm.
totally anti paranormal. And I was like, so
Mhm.
what about the supernatural? Oh, yeah, I'm into the supernatural. I even love the supernatural show. And I was like, you realize that's a paranormal show?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's not. I was like,
Yes. Yeah.
let me explain to you something.
Mhm.
Supernatural falls in paranormal realm, and they're like,
Yeah.
no, it's spirituality. I'm like, no,
Whoever
Mm-mm.
wrote that show
it's
really did their research.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
It is.
And I was like, and they're like, well, angels aren't paranormal. I was like, actually, yes, they are.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
they were like, how are they angels? I was like, well, because they're a creature that's unexplained.
Mhm.
And the paranormal's definition is anything that's unexplained, is one way to look at it. But the other way to look at it, and this is something that I've recently started looking at, is as we're becoming more aware of other races out there in the
Mhm.
universe, or multiverse, or ultraverse, however far you want to look at it,
Mhm.
those beings came here to help us, and
Mhm.
so therefore the angels could be classified as one of those, in which
Mhm.
case it's still paranormal. I
Yeah.
hate to break it to you, you're not going to ever get that out of the paranormal field.
Yeah. It's funny, because Japan in the past, they're more into the paranormal, and you'd find the people who are into that are more older people, right? But the young people don't want to have anything to do with it, right?
Right.
Like Amanda's age compared to my age, like, and they're more analytical, and if it doesn't pop out in front of you, they don't believe it. And so if it, like, they're into this writing in these books, so writing in the papers and stuff like that. And so if it doesn't pop out at you, if you can't see it, if you can't feel it, they won't believe it. So
Yeah, but the thing is, we have to remember, as paranormal investigators, we were there once.
mhm.
I think that's the problem, is a lot of investigators forget that. And
Mhm.
so when people are starting on the bottom and are like, hey, I don't know about this or that,
Mhm.
a lot of them will have seen on videos or
Mhm.
other things
Mhm.
putting people down for ideas. And I'm like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
You were there once.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if it was 30, 40 years ago. that, since you were in those shoes, but we need to take a step back as being seasoned investigators
Yeah.
and go when people approach us and say, you know what? Could their idea hold water?
Yeah.
Is there
But
an ounce of validity to it? And if yes, help them explore it.
mhm,
Don't shut them down.
yeah. But I think even to this day, I don't dare tell anybody what I do. I don't
I
dare
know.
tell anybody that I speak to ghosts in my house. I don't dare tell anybody that we have a paranormal um conference with my client, the spirit, and me talking to the spirit, and they're having a conversation, right? I don't dare tell anybody that. I'd be stuck in the loony bin. I tell you. I mean, yeah, they'd
Oh
be
yeah.
shoving pills down my throat, right? So Japan today is not a situation where you can talk about it, right? I don't. I still don't. I still can't tell anybody what I do.
Well, and
It.
the frustrating thing here in America is, and Amanda, you probably experienced this when you were growing up, is you can travel to one city and they're like, oh, we have all these legends of this ghost over here and this ghost here. And then you go to the next town and they're like, we don't have a ghost. There's no
Yeah.
way anything here is haunted. And so it's like, there is no fluid. It's like
Yeah.
certain
Yeah.
spots will embrace it, some will deny it, some will
Yeah.
hide it or try to destroy it. And it's like, why can't we all just put it out there and be like, hey, either it's there or it's not?
Yeah.
What, we have no common ground.
No. Here they don't want to see it. If it's there, they don't want to see it. If it's there, they're afraid of it. Like not to do anger it. They don't want to anger it. Okay, that's one thing that I can agree with. People don't want to anger the spirits. Okay, they want to um. Okay, let's not anger it. Let's give it the respect that it deserves, so they can't come back and anger you, right? And be angry about anything. But I
Yeah.
mean, they just they don't want to talk about it. People nowadays, especially people in the 20s, they don't want to talk about it. They used to have lots of great paranormal TV programs in Japan, but they don't even have that anymore. You'll find it mostly on YouTube now. They'll stream it on YouTube, or they'll stream it on TikTok now, because and you see a lot of great haunted places where a lot of great paranormal investigators will go there and explore it and show what's haunted, and actually go to and explore the certain places and talk to the spirits, right? And you could see it on the video. They'll even show you that on the video. But I mean, if you find it anywhere else, you're not going to find it. And if you ask them to come here and talk to us, they won't do it because they have jobs and they don't want to be fired from their jobs.
And what's surprising me about that is when you look at Japanime and the
Mhm.
mangas,
Mhm.
there's a series out that I stumbled across, and I don't know if you or Amanda have seen it, called Bleach.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was watching that and I was like, oh my God, this is like a paranormal investigator's dream. This is
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
explains a lot. And
Yeah.
it's like, I've watched all of it. I haven't seen chapters 2 or 3 of the Thousand Year War,
Mhm.
but it's like, I was watching that and going, this is explaining so much
Mhm.
about what we do in a way that I think is
Yeah.
brilliant.
And they have another one called Death Note,
Yeah.
and that's also in the paranormal. And they have another one. It's a children's program. I watch sometimes on kids station. It's called Gegege Kitaro, and I think they've even translated that in English, and they made a lot of movies of the cryptids in Japan. and some of the yokai in Japan, and that's a kids program, and every kid watches that in Japan, right? From my
I think
kids
they're
when they were
trying to
young.
bring it back.
Yeah,
I really think the older generation is trying to bring it back. And
yeah, and they made new movies, and you can find it on Netflix in Japan too. And you know what? You can watch it as a kid. They grow up within the paranormal as a kid watching those programs, but the adults don't want to have anything to do with it, right?
right, and
It.
as many cartoons that have been made into live movies,
Mm-hmm,
Bleach, I actually stumbled on, did a live version
mm-hmm,
of the movie and of the series, a little bit of it, and I was like, man, I was so hoping they were going to keep going because I was like, it was so well done
mm-hmm.
that it like, and then I look at like Dragon Ball Z and they did a live version, and I was like, what were y'all thinking? You totally changed the story
Mm-hmm.
and changed this and that, and it just did not work. It's like there's some shows, and I don't know what the magic of Japanime and the mangas is,
Mm-hmm.
but when you stick to the script and the
Mm-hmm.
story,
Mm-hmm.
they succeed and people flourish to them. And when you
Mm-hmm.
try and rewrite them and change them,
Mm-hmm.
it's like everybody's like, nope, and they
Yeah.
bomb and fail.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just the old programs were like the some of them were really scary. The old children's uh, anime programs are really scary, right?
Right.
And they lost that kind of concept back then, right? So
Yeah,
yeah.
and what amazes me is there are so many shows. Like I grew up, and I'll admit I was watching like Voltron,
Mm-hmm.
and I had no idea until I was like in my 20s or 30s that Voltron originated in Japan
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
as Go Lion. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like blown away. I was like, wait, what? And it
Yeah.
seems like Transformers was
Yeah.
in Japan
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
And so all of these shows that showed us, you know, what I call disclosure of, the truth out there of, we're not alone in the universe and
Mm-hmm.
we don't understand everything,
Yeah.
has its basis in Japan's children's programming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Uh, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of programs that came out. Like we don't have superheroes. Uh, like Spider-Man and Superman and stuff like that. We don't have that here. Um, most of it is either came from outer space, like Ultraman is a Japanese that had monsters who came
Right.
out of space, right? And you have the superhero who fights with the monsters from outer space, and that's what most of it's about, right?
Right.
And
Wasn't there
there's
also Cybermen or something that
yeah,
became what we call the Power Rangers?
Power Rangers Go 5. Yeah, that's also something that is like from outer space too, right?
Yeah.
So mostly it's from outer space, and mostly it's from, like, they have a robot too. I forgot the name of it. Damn it. My husband knows. I forgot the name. Oh, Astro Boy.
Yeah.
That's from outer space too, right? But I mean, most of it's from outer space in this country, right? Or something that gave it power that was from outer space, or some kind of um uh um
Yeah. I mean, there was the Guyver series where
yeah, yeah,
it was UFO had crashed and was buried, and then
yeah,
was resurrected.
Yeah. And you find it's either out of space or came from one of the spirits in Japan. That's mostly like all children watching it, right?
Yeah.
My kids watched it as a kid, right?
Look at
And
the
my kids,
Avatar series.
yep, yeah, and they all watched it, and they all. But my kids are really creepy. My kids are like they're sensitive too. So my mother had it. I have it. My eldest son has it. My daughter has it. My youngest son has it. Like we're all into the creepy stuff, right?
Right.
So it's just like we all watched it as children. Most of us embraced it. If you ask my children about certain things, they'll come out and they'll give you a paragraph about it, right?
Right.
Um, so they know more as children growing up with it. And it's a little bit different if you're really into it and if you're not, right? Because
Right. And the other interesting thing too is when you look at horror movies, all the successful horror movies that are really, the ones that people remember, like Grunge, The Ring, all of those, all actually originated in Japan.
yeah,
And it's funny because one thing I'll tell people is if you look into the backstory of all those movies, it's based off of a
yeah,
Japanese urban legend or a Japanese ghost story. Like The Ring is based off of a Japanese ghost story. They just kind
Right.
of modernize it.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's and you know what? Our horror movies is based on real creepy places, haunted places, and spirits, and well, what we call that. And in America, it's mostly like crazy people going out and killing people, right? which
Yeah.
which is not what we call haunted.
Yeah. The only one I'm curious that I don't know if I ever traced back to Japan would be the Friday the 13th series and the Nightmare on Elm Street series.
Friday the 13th is actually based off of, it's not here in Japan, but it was based off of something, because I used to live in Montana. It is based off of a ghost, it's based off of a story in Montana where there was, because an hour and a half away from Billings, there was basically a Camp Crystal Lake, and a guy and a kid did drown, and his mom did go crazy. So they just kind of made it, Friday the 13th based off of that because people would still go, obviously, camping in those woods, and they would always say the superstition is sleep with one eye open when you camp in this forest for that reason is Jason.
Right.
Um,
But
Uh,
Irene, do you know if Nightmare on Elm Street is that an American version
I
or
think it's an American version. I don't.
it's an American thing, yeah. It's based off an
Yeah,
actual case in America.
yeah.
I forgot where it was though. I remember reading about that somewhere.
You
and
know, talking about the subject, you know that my battery just went dead. Just talking about,
really?
and I had a full battery coming into this, and it's like 1% now.
Wow.
Yeah, and usually I get kicked off this podcast 3 times. So if I do, don't be alarmed. Amanda knows.
People are like freaking out at times because like we'll be doing a podcast, she'll be kicked off, and I'll just keep talking, and they're just like, "What? Why are you acting like it's nothing, Amanda?" Then all of a sudden, Irene pops back up. I'm like, "That's why. Nothing new. I knew she was coming back on, so I was
Yeah.
just finishing the thing.
The one thing that
She's coming
drives
back
me
on."
nuts, yeah, that drives me nuts doing the live shows is when the guest like spins out and drops out, and you're
Hmm.
like, "Uh oh," you know,
Yeah.
yeah, they coming back or what? And you start talking, and then they pop back in, and they're like, keep talking, and I'm like, wait, we missed something here, and it's like, yeah, because you never know, like when someone pops out,
Uh-huh.
Are
We
they
were
gonna?
talking to my friend, my friend that I usually watch on his podcast. We were talking to him about videos that you don't share in this country, right? That you shouldn't share, and that's why I don't share my groups. I think you notice that too. uh, Is that Michael's? I don't share Japanese haunted videos,
Right.
and I was talking about that, right? And I got kicked out of the podcast, and I couldn't get back in because I couldn't find the link. It just went it's kind of weird on me. I said, and I messaged him. I said, Amanda, I'm gonna finish off here because I can't get back in. Something's preventing me to coming back in again, and I don't know what the heck it was, but it was just like, yeah, I can't get back in. I'm gonna end it here, and I said goodbye to everybody this way. And sometimes you could hear my voice, but you couldn't see me, and so yeah, I had to end it because I couldn't get back in no matter what I did.
Yeah, I've had that happen, and it's like it's those moments when I'm glad I have a second
Hmm.
because I'm like, oh, I can talk to this person until they come back in, or
Hmm.
I'll be like, well, until the guest comes back, let's just, fill you in on what's upcoming.
Yeah.
And I try to think of topics that it's like, if I just stop, no one's going to care if I don't
Mm-hmm.
finish that conversational topic
Hmm.
and jump back into the show.
Hmm.
But I'm kind of curious, Amanda. Are those cherry blossoms in your background of
Yeah.
the
Yes,
of the
it's supposed to
show?
be a photo taken in Tokyo. I was trying to find something that makes you think Japan in the background, and I found that. I tried using different photos, but unfortunately they just came out blurry. So I'm trying to also find photos that look like you can tell it's Japan, but also make sense for like when you have like three like this, or even four, when you kind of see a
Hmm.
little, between the squares.
Hmm.
Right. Yeah, I was just thinking. I was like, I wonder if this was during the cherry blossom festival.
Yeah, cherry blossoms here do not last long. Like once they
Nope.
bloom, you have within a week before they are completely gone. So it's not like you have them for a full season. It's like a week, if that.
Hmm.
And I've often wondered why are they called cherry blossoms because they don't bear cherries.
They bear fruit.
Oh, they do?
I'll show you. You can
I
make.
always thought they were just flowers and just they fell off and that was that.
Yeah, they bear fruit. You have to
Oh,
preserve it because you can't eat it the way it is. This is what we call Japanese moonshine. So the fruit in it is kind of sour. It's
okay.
plums. It's plums, and you poke holes in it. You fill it up with white liquor, and you let it sit. And this other one here, oh, I can't lift this bottle. But yeah, this one you have red leaves in it, and then you let it soak in salt and red leaves, and you can eat it 6 months later. So they do
Yeah,
produce fruit.
no offense, Irene, but that last one, you're on your own with that one. That did not look edible or drinkable to me. My personal feelings.
Oh, the last one, it's medicinal.
Ah, that
You
explains it.
you eat it when you have a stomach problem, or 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 on a hot day when you can't eat anything else. It produces enzymes that makes you want to eat.
Okay.
Yeah, it coats the stomach. So, and it gets really hot in this country, so everything spoils. So um yeah, you just it's not the dry heat like what you have in Texas. It's wet and damp and ugh.
Yeah, that sounds like it's more enjoyable than what we have, though.
Oh, unless you want to get swamp ass in July and August.
No. Nope. That's Louisiana territory.
That's where Howard is, right?
Yep.
Well, that's like Japan too. July and August is July is the rainy season, so you get rain for 2 weeks, right? And you go, ugh, you feel like a damn sponge that has mold on it. And then after the rainy season's finished, then you get the really hot air. And like, I bet you can fry an egg on the cement floor because yeah,
Yeah.
it's really hot. And
Yeah, we're finally getting rain here.
Amanda's near the ocean, right?
Mhm.
I'm near, like, more inland, and yeah, it's like a concrete city, and it gets so hot.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, yeah, you can't sit in your house. You have to get the hose from outside and spray cold air water on the roof, because the air conditioning doesn't work, because it's still, it's just like, I'm sitting there going, ugh. Like,
Yeah.
you can't move, you can't breathe, and the force sticks to your legs, and you go, no, can't do this.
Yeah,
So,
people don't realize like how hot concrete gets, and
Yeah.
oh
they
yeah,
put an article out like, for people walking their pets,
mm-hmm,
that if it's 82 degrees or higher,
mm-hmm,
you'll burn their paws.
yeah, that's why they have booties here
Well, I
in
can't
Japan.
walk my dog during the day, and people say, "Why don't get her booties?" And it's like she doesn't like anything touching her paws, so I have
Mm-hmm.
to take her out really early in the morning or wait until evening when the sun is starting to finally go down. Unfortunately, here, especially in the summertime, the sun starts coming up at 4 a.m.
Yeah,
Ugh, forget that.
Yeah,
yeah. Well, 3:30, it's already light out by 3:30 in the morning,
yeah. I was gonna say by 4 o'clock, it's pretty much like it'd be like noon for you. That's how
yeah.
much light you'll have.
And the birds start chirping at 3:30 in the morning. You go, you'd be
Soundproof windows.
you'd be swearing and cussing in the middle of the night. Oh, man, you can't believe it. You'd be throwing a blanket over your head because you just want to say, "Oh, just give me a couple more hours, please, please, please." Like, yeah,
Yeah, I have a friend in Australia, and I forget every once in a while about the time difference, and I'm like, it's 9 o'clock, have a good night. And they're like, it's daytime. I'm like,
yeah,
oh, sorry, forgot.
yeah. Time zones are a real pain in the butt. That's
Yeah,
They
it
right.
really
are,
is.
and especially when you get those that don't change. And or the one that got me was I did a interview with this lovely lady in Canada,
Mm-hmm.
and she goes, "Well, what time zone are you in?" I go, "Central time zone." She goes, "So we're 3.5 hours ahead of you." And I go, "Wait, what?" And she goes, "Yeah, they put a half hour on our time zone because of where we're at with the." And I was like, "You're kidding, right?" And I looked it up, and sure enough, they are 3.5 hours ahead of me.
So crazy.
So yeah, I was like, I had to add an extra half hour to account for time difference.
Like, we don't have daylight saving time, right? It's just one time.
I really personally feel like the whole planet needs to go to that
Yeah,
and get rid of daylight savings, because this is the headache I have.
yeah.
Is in the UK, they start daylight savings ahead of us, so you would
Mm-hmm.
think they ended ahead of us.
Mm-hmm.
No, they ended 3 weeks after us.
Oh gosh.
How do you make sense of that?
No, I don't.
It's
Hi,
like,
Simone.
and it really, like, when people will sit there and argue with me that time is a natural concept, I'm like, no, no, it's not. Look at how messed up it is. This is not
Yeah,
natural.
it's just, yeah, it's just it's screwed up. That's about that.
Yeah, we
It's,
created time.
yeah,
And it's like, we have messed up time.
yeah. We screwed it up like you wouldn't believe.
Even our calendars. I mean, our calendars were originally 13
Mm-hmm.
months. Now they're 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
And they're out of order.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you really got to wonder who was sitting down and decided, let's
Yeah.
really mess with people. And
Like we're one day ahead of you, right?
Right.
Like,
But
yeah.
here's one of the urban legends of how in America we celebrate April 1st is April Fool's Day.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Is somebody had looked at it and said if we had kept our 13-month calendar,
Hmm.
April 1st would be actually the beginning of our new year.
Hmm.
So New Year's Day is actually April 1st.
Hmm.
That's why we call it April Fool's Day, because we're like, ha ha, you're really supposed to be, your new year here, fooled you, made that you believe it's January.
Oh, guess what? My daughter was born on April Fool's Day, on April 1st.
I hope you were not that parent that says, hey, we got you a car, April Fools.
Nah, I'm not like that. They do that at school with her. She gets that whenever she goes to school, and she gets pretty pissed off.
Yeah.
She
I
said,
feel
"Ah,
bad for
shut
the
up."
guy, though. If there was a guy that ever asked her out on her birthday
Mhm.
and was being serious and she thinks, oh, you're just making an April Fool's joke, and be like, poor guy.
Yeah,
He
no, she's
doesn't
not like
know.
that. She's not like that. She's more sensitive, but then again, she has a temper. Like she's an Aries, right? So she'd probably knock off his block.
So she takes after you in that aspect.
Ah, no, she's worse than me.
Oh, dear God.
Yeah, she's worse than me.
I can
I've
just
seen
see
her.
Amanda's face over there. It's like, oh, yeah.
Well, you see, you should see her fight with her brothers, right? She broke. She's in the middle child. Okay, she broke his finger one time with just a plain old cardboard box. She said, "I'm gonna get you." So he had to be rushed to the hospital and get a cast on his finger.
Good God, man.
Yeah, it's just well, welcome to my family, okay? Just don't worry about it. That's why I'm upstairs. That's why they're downstairs, okay? I stay
As
away
long
from
as there's no
everything.
blood trails, everything's okay.
Oh, I've seen that too.
Good Lord, I have not gone to Irene's house.
Oh, don't worry about it. You'll be fine.
I'm not sure I'll leave with everything I arrived with.
You'll be okay. Don't worry about it. Guests are okay. Just family members are scared. And everyone's scared of my daughter. Even my husband's scared of my daughter.
No, but I am so glad you guys are on our network now.
Yeah,
We're
me too.
too.
Yeah, we're happy. And like, we don't have this hour limit thing on it. Yeah.
Nope,
We
you guys
talk
are in the
too much.
channel. You are free to go as long as you want.
Yeah. When we heard that, we're like, yes, finally, someone understands us.
When I messaged Amanda, guess what? We can join Paralanx and we can go as long as we want. And then she said, "You're kidding." And she goes, "Really?" I go, "Yeah." And she goes, and I said, "No one's gonna blow up your phone, and no one's gonna blow up my phone, so we're good." She goes, "Oh my god." She goes, she goes, "Yeah, we're joining."
The problem we had with other networks too is they're just like, you get this one slot and you can only be 1 hour. You cannot go over it. So at that 1 hour, you better be saying bye and getting off. And we're just like, we talk too much for an hour.
We can't do an hour show. Like,
I know. I find it so hard to do an hour show, and it amazes me when I do interviews and they're like, it'll be an hour. And it's like, you look at the time when they send it to you and you upload it, and it's like an hour. It's like 53 minutes. I'm like, we had 7 more minutes.
yeah.
How did we finish with time left?
Like, we're an hour show. I think the only thing we could do is urban legends on an hour show, right, Amanda?
We did, but we still had people asking questions about it. And we're like, sorry, we're told this is our time.
Yeah.
So gotta go. Maybe we'll
Yeah.
answer that another time.
Yeah, and the chat has so much questions, right? They want to
Yeah.
ask our guests, and we can't do it. We can't do it, and we have to say goodbye. And they're going, what? Like how can that be, right? But yeah,
Yeah, so what I do when that happens is I go, I'm sorry to everyone who I couldn't get to your questions. When the
yeah,
guest comes back on, bring those questions and we'll start with those and we'll get them answered.
yeah. But even still, one question could take a half an hour
Oh,
to
yeah.
2 hours, right? Because you're like anything about paranormal, you can't answer it in 15 seconds, right? It's
No.
almost
At least
impossible.
you shouldn't be answering 15 seconds. If you are, you're not providing enough information.
And knowing your guests too, and what they have to offer to the show and what they're talking about, that takes another what, half an hour, 2 hours, right?
Definitely.
So it's just like it's almost impossible. It's like hi and bye, like what was that all about, right?
Well,
And
and what I noticed with when watching the time, the first half hour on shows, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but
mm-hmm,
moves very slow.
mm-hmm,
Yeah.
And the second half hour is like over in a blink.
Yeah, that's what I also tell people is that first half hour is basically me with the guest doing a small talk, and then after that is when things start picking up. And that, especially after that first hour, we've already had more of that rapport, so it really starts picking up. So I'm like,
yeah,
I can at least try and limit it to 2 hours. When you say 1 hour and done, it's
yeah. You can't create a rapport, and you can't really warm up to the person, and you can't
yeah,
really get into it. Once you get into it, you have to say goodbye. You go, what?
Well, and the thing I find that I do, because my show is supposed to be an hour, is when I hit like 5 minutes till, I'm like, hey, we're running short on time or close to the end of the hour. There's still some questions out there. Do you want to funnel the questions, or do you need to go? Because if they
Yeah,
need to go, I want to be respectful of that.
yeah, yeah,
But if they're like, well, some will say, well, I actually booked, 2 hours for this. I'm like, well, we're not doing 2 hours, but,
um,
we'll do. And I say that, and I've gone over 2 hours
yeah.
once or twice.
But you can't really put a time limit on certain things like this, right? Especially on important subjects like this that takes you elsewhere and talks about things that normally you don't want to talk about, right?
Well, I don't think it's normally not want to talk about. I think
Mm,
it's that a lot of people don't really get asked about. And
yeah.
so that's why when I do like my show where it's conversational, a
Mm-hmm,
lot of guests will be like, "Oh, I'm so glad you had asked that one question because I
mm-hmm,
don't really get to talk about that." And I was
yeah,
so thrilled I got to talk about it. I
yeah,
was like, "Well, cool. I'm glad I
yeah,
caught that one."
yeah. And you have to keep it going because you just can't really not say anything during your show, right? And you can,
mhm.
okay, now I got to think about a question. Okay, now it takes me 5 minutes to think about a question. Go, okay, now
Yeah,
what was it? Like, and you got to think about now how did I put it in words, right? That's acceptable on social media, right?
yeah, and people are so amazed with my show because they ask me, how much research and questions do you do on your guest? And I'm like, I do a little bit of research to go, yeah, this is going to be a fun topic, and
Mm-hmm.
conversation about this.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, how many questions do you come up with? And I go, one. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, my show is based off of one question.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, the funniest question I think that's out there. And the one question I do on all my shows is, so for the people who aren't familiar with you, can you share what you do? And from that, an entire hour, hour and a half, 2 hour show is born.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It just goes.
Yeah.
And
Eh,
people are
eh,
like, how do you do that? I'm like, I just do. And
yeah.
so a little trade secret too that I don't share very often, and I've only shared on one podcast interview, so this is exclusive to you guys,
Mm-hmm.
is I have theater background.
Mm-hmm.
So I've learned improv and other acting skills,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't share that with a lot of people because I don't want people thinking, oh, he's an actor, so this is all fake. He's acting. I'm like, no, it's all real.
Yeah.
It's just so like improv. We
And
are taught how to freeze a moment and in a split second take somebody's spot, create a whole new story and
mm-hmm.
everything.
Yeah.
So it's like where there's a silence, I can fill that silence really quick because I can adapt, jump to a different topic.
Mm-hmm. And
And yeah,
yeah, and work with it that way, and how you ask your questions, and how you answer your questions to make it like that's kind of interesting, right?
yeah. And I mean, there are times where I've had people go, oh, you really spent a lot of time on this one topic, it wasn't as long on this one. And it's like, well, because at that point,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel like I needed to expand and
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
explain more. And this time I felt like I did. And, it's a trust your feelings. And
Yeah.
sometimes they'll,
Yeah.
lead to everyone's like, hey, that was really great. Thank you for sharing. And other times it'll be like, yeah, you kind of explained it better over there, but it was
Mm-hmm.
still good.
Yeah. Michael, I just want to know, bucket list.
Bucket list. So domestic, meaning around the U.S. I think my
Worldwide.
bucket list would be.
International.
Oh, I do two. I do
Mm-hmm.
two bucket lists.
Is it that long?
Well, it depends because there are some places I want to do international, but there are some I want to do local and domestic wise. So I always say I got two lists
Mm.
because some shows want to know what locally you want to go to, and some are like, yeah, share the international side.
Yeah.
So, but domestic first would be the Winchester
Mm-hmm.
Mansion. I'd
Yeah,
love to do that.
they're
Mm-hmm.
still discovering new hidden rooms in that house. They probably always
Yeah.
will.
Yeah.
Yeah. And another one is Antietam Battlefield
Mm.
that goes along with Gettysburg.
Mm-hmm.
And another one, I'm trying to think where it was, but a lot of times what comes to mind is the Yuma prison, territorial prison, the one that's in the desert, where they were like, they didn't care if you escaped because you were going to die in the desert. So it's like, that would be interesting. And international, I would say one is the Paris catacombs,
Mm-hmm.
the tunnels under Edinburgh,
Mm-hmm.
the Romanian forest where no trees grow, that
Mm-hmm.
spot. I'm like, that just is so curious to me why no trees will grow there.
Isn't that close to Vlad Castle too? Isn't it?
It might be.
Yeah. It's in the same area.
And um trying to think, Patagonia Island,
Mm-hmm.
Plague Island near Italy.
Mm.
That one would be interesting, just because it's like no longer really available. So it's like, ooh, that would be so cool if you could get permission and go, because you'd be like, ha ha.
Yeah. Guess where I am.
I know, I'd be like, guess where I get to go? I got permission.
You know, it's funny going back to where you said you only come up with one question for your show. We don't come up really with questions either before a show
No.
because people are like, do you have a topic that we're going to talk about? And I was like, whatever comes up with us. To be
Mhm.
honest, we had one person that ended up not working out, not scheduling. Hopefully, it will in the future. So I'm not going to mention who. But
Yeah.
they wanted us to send for them to be on the show a list of the questions first. And I'm just like, we've never came up with questions before a show. But also,
Yeah.
what happens if? And I was like, what happens if we have additional questions that come up? Because that's what happened. You're gonna answer a question. We're gonna have questions based off of your answer. What if someone in the chat asks you a question based on your answer? Can we
Yeah.
ask that, or is that like, no, sorry, it was on that list that we sent you pre-approved of? Yes. I was like,
That's
we've never done that before. I'm like, I might be
no.
able to come up with like 2 or 3 questions beforehand, but other than that, it's mostly just a conversation. What comes up, what comes up.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only time I've ever been asked about questions in advance is because the person has so many topics that they talk about
Mhm.
that they wanted to make sure they had information pertaining to that topic at hand.
Mhm.
And so I was like, yeah, I really don't know if I can give you questions. And I talked back and forth, and we ended up doing the show anyway, and it worked out great. But yeah, it's hard for me because I don't like things to feel scripted. And
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I told him. I felt like it's too scripted. We've never done that. I was like, I
No.
can't even think of the questions to be honest with you ahead of time because it's
No.
more of a conversation. Like, well, what if I want to show my work? I'm like, we allow that, but we're
Yeah.
probably gonna have additional questions once we
Yeah.
see it. So I
And
can't give
Amanda
you.
asked me about that, right? She asked me about that. I said, "Well, we kind of like ad lib everything, right?
Yeah, no,
We're not.
like
Yeah, we're like go
I
with
was
the
like, I
flow
could give
thing,
you the
right?
first 1 or 2 questions, but other than
Yeah.
that, it's I can't.
We
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 can't give
can't
yeah,
you.
promise anything like that either, and we can't tell you what we're thinking of because I don't know what I'm gonna say until that person comes on,
Just
or
when they
I
show
don't.
their work.
Yeah, I just don't know, and I can't tell you, Amanda. And Amanda said, "Yeah, you're right. Like we can't explain anything, and we can't. There's no way what I can do that, and me being touchy feely, like sometimes I might find say, hey, you got a spirit next door, you got a attachment, or you got a something in your home. Like it can come up spontaneous to me like that too. So I cannot. Sometimes I can't hide it either, right? Sometimes I'll say it
yeah,
and I can't hide it, and I just can't not stop thinking about it, right? So, like,
yeah. And one of the things that I get a lot of feedback on with my guests is I like how it was just conversation because we
hmm
got to cover stuff that I normally don't get to.
hmm
And so, yeah, and for the longest time on one of my shows, we had questions, but we would hardly get to all the questions, or
hmm
we'd be done with the questions in like the first 20 minutes. And so it's
hmm
like, well, fumbling for the last bit of the show. And
yeah,
that's where it's like, I like just going with the conversation because it's like I can hear
hmm
like a statement and go, wait a minute, I have a
yeah,
question about that. Well,
yeah,
what you just said. And yeah, we get a chance to go deeper on it. And
mhm,
that to me makes for better shows than
yeah,
having everything scripted and just being okay. Yes, we're asking this normal question,
yeah,
this question that's already been asked and been
yeah,
asked and been asked. And
yeah. There's one thing that I don't like is the stuffy podcast. Like
Hmm.
everything's like. blah 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 like this. It's scripted. It's not scripted, but it looks scripted. Okay, and
Yeah.
they're just like, and you're going, okay, yeah, I'm done. For the first 5 seconds, I go, okay, see ya, I'm done. Bye. You're like, I'm busy. Like,
Yeah. And to me, being a podcast host, and I'm sure you, Irene, and Amanda have dealt with these, is the guests that bless their heart, and I mean that in the southern way and the polite way of
mhm,
when they give you like a yes or no answer, so to
mhm,
speak, and
mhm.
it's like you have nothing to build on.
Yeah,
Yeah, we've had that happen where I asked a question, they just said yes, and I was waiting for them to like elaborate, and they just sat there, and I'm like, oh, okay.
yeah,
Yeah, or they're like, you ask like, so have you had experiences with, anything paranormal? Well, yes, I have. And
what?
then they stop, and you're like, can you share them? It's like, why
Yeah,
do I have to ask you to share it? It's like, this is what this is about, promoting
yeah.
you. And it's like, you feel like you got to pull
You got
the
to pull the
information
tooth out,
out.
right? It's like going to the dentist, right? And like getting a tooth
People thought it
extraction,
was
right?
awkward sitting there in silence. I'm like, I was waiting for them to answer. I thought they were at least with the yes going to tell a story or be like,
Yeah,
but I can't share that. At least when you just said their yes, I'm just like, what? What do I do?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Are they able to? Are they able to explain or no?
yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing I felt a little bad about was on an interview I was on recently where there was a panel of people asking me questions. I could hear like 3 out of 4 of them really clearly. And so I was able to respond
Hmm.
and interact with, but one was so soft spoken. It's like I almost felt like I had to lean into the computer
Like,
to hear what they're
yeah,
saying. And I'm like, and I would feel bad because I'd be like, I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Can you repeat that? And it's like, I felt bad because I didn't have to say that to anybody else. It's like, why are
yeah,
you so soft spoken? And it's like, but I mean, they turn out fine and everything, it's well received. But it's just that moment where you're feeling like, I feel so bad that I have to say, I can't hear you.
yeah. Like sometimes I say that in the chat. Can't hear that person, or sometimes the audio is weird, or sometimes when we're doing this podcast, sometimes I hear um like real static, and I know it's not. It's paranormal, okay?
Yeah.
And I know there's a spirit in the messing around with the equipment. So here I am trying to get rid of it and everything. What's Irene doing? What's Irene doing? And I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. And they go, what's she doing? Like, that's weird, right?
Yeah.
And I have to
Weird if you
explain
watch the
myself
show
like,
enough, you're used to it.
yeah. And
Yeah. And, it's funny, Amanda, and transparency for your show was you had said to me, how much time do I have
yeah.
set aside for this? And remember, I said 2 hours. I don't tend to
Mhm.
go over 2 hours.
Yeah.
I just looked at the time and I was like,
And that's why I tell
wow.
people, because some people are just like, you won't need us that long, and we're just like, are you sure? No, people are done with us within 40 minutes and we're good. And I'm just like, you don't know us,
Yeah.
okay? Give me a time. They're like, no, you'll be done soon. Don't worry about it. And then 3 hours later, they're just like, oh. And I'm like, yes, this is what happens. If you don't tell me, hey, I gotta leave here,
Yeah.
we'll keep talking until you're like, hey, I
There
didn't
are
realize you
times
guys
when,
could.
yeah.
I didn't
There are
realize you
times
guys
when,
could actually talk. We're like, yeah.
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 There are times when I had to leave because I had a different appointment and I'd have to dip out within an hour and a half or an hour. And I said, I gotta go. Bye. But other than that, I'm on. I'm on to the end.
It's what I find with my show is you get caught up in a topic and yeah, the time just seems to zip by.
Yeah. And when you're having so much fun or interested and you want to know more, like Okay, tell us more. Okay, like let's go on with it. Go,
Yeah,
let's do it right. It's just like, yeah, it's really weird.
yeah. And I have friends that do shows, and I've been helping, and we did a live on their show for the first time.
Hmm.
And the funny story behind it was they're used to doing hour shows.
Hmm.
Well, they were like reading my bio, and they're like, "You have so much stuff in your bio. I don't think we're gonna fit it." I was like, "Just relax.
Yeah.
We'll fit in what we can, and
Hmm.
if there's more." That's when you invite people back and you
Yeah.
multiple,
Yeah.
part with the guest. And so they were like, okay, so we did part one, and we're like, man, we didn't even really get into this, so we're gonna have to have you back. And they're like, well, let's do live.
Yeah.
Let's dip our toe into the live stream field. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, so we did a live, and we still couldn't finish the topic. So they're like, yeah, we're gonna have you back for a third episode. And I was like, this is so cool. I feel like I've got a trilogy coming
Yeah.
with this show.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, when your shows are comfortable with the time slot,
Yeah.
that yeah, you have the option as host to
Hmm.
don't cram it into 1 hour and make the episode like stressful. Make it a multi-part.
Yeah. And you can't always guarantee that you're gonna stick to that script or stick to the questions, right? Because
Oh, I know.
there's always something that comes up. There's always some other thing that that's comes through, and you want to ask that question, and then you feel, well, maybe that's not important. Maybe let's talk about something else and that's what makes it really interesting. And I don't like finding out this and that, because to me that's kind of boring. Okay.
Yeah, and I've had shows to where I'm like, there's like three things in the bio that are super unique
Hmm.
Mhm.
and rare that I've never seen in some like conversation. Like I set in motion in the beginning to
Hmm.
those to one of those topics, and I know it's going to lead to another.
Hmm.
And then when the person takes a break, I'm like breathing, like you were saying, Amanda, taking that pause,
Hmm.
and I'll be like, "Ooh, this is a good time to." In full transparency, I'll go and say, we're talking about this backstage, and this seems like a good time to counter over to that topic. And they're like, actually, yeah, you're right, it is. And then we'll jump, and I'm like, okay, I got my three questions answered because they were so rare. I
Hmm.
was like, I felt so proud that I got them in, and it's like, yes,
Yeah. And there were times when you really can't get anything in, because it's just like you're so busy listening to what's going on, and listening to the happening of what they experience, that sometimes you just can't get your question in, or it becomes obsolete, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Or my favorite is you have this great question in mind, and you're like, oh, this is so great. He's going to love that I'm going to ask this. And then they'll
In
be
his
telling their
house, Josh,
story. Huh?
I'm interested in who was the younger male, a child. You talking about in his house? Someone in his house, spirit wise?
What younger male? I am a little confused at this.
I know there's someone in there in a room, spirit wise, with you.
Yeah, there is. I'm looking at it. It's over there.
Yeah.
I usually have an entourage, to be honest. I got spirits around me all the time.
Okay. Cause yeah, I can see him. He's standing right there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes they do good at keeping me in line, and like I'll start wanting to talk about a topic I shouldn't be talking about, and I'll start coughing and
Cause
be
you
like,
were
"Hold
coughing
on."
a couple seconds
I'm
ago.
like, "Nope, not going there."
Yeah. Cause it's just He's sitting there. He's looking. It's just really interesting.
Do you get a name or anything?
I hear the name David, and I hear another one that's the name Sean. I get two. One more prominent, one in the shadow. In the background, I get David's out front. Sean is in the background.
Interesting.
They're kind of young. They're not that old.
Are they
One may be a teenager. The other one's a little bit younger.
have they always been around me, or did they like
Since we started the podcast,
hitchhike
they've
a
been
little
there.
bit?
Since we started the podcast, they've been there. I just kept my mouth shut.
Yeah.
I've had that happen to where people will through shows like appear, and then I'm like, okay, I do cleansing and clear because people will come through the shows sometime.
He's not hurting anybody.
No,
He's
yeah,
just there. That's all.
That's how I feel about some spirits. If they're just there, I don't care.
Yeah,
as
they're
long
not
as they're
gonna.
nice and stay friendly.
That's what they all say, right? What do you get? What do you think about this? That brings me another conversation of the story that about spirits. What do you think about people who say my house is haunted, and they said, "Oh, we don't want them to go, but they're making people sick in the house, or they're creating havoc in the house." What do you feel about that?
Well, personally, I feel like I have to respect their wishes because it's their home, and
Hmm.
so I can't intervene. However, if the spirits are saying something else, then I'm like, I can intervene
Hmm.
because spirits have rights too, and
Hmm.
you can't force a spirit to stay so you can claim something. But to me, it's a gray area
Yeah.
where if the spirits want to go, but the people are making their business at this, it's like,
There are some
yeah,
places like that.
Yeah.
it's,
And they're making money off of it, right?
yeah, and I'm like, I don't want to mess with their living, but at the same time, the spirit wants to go, and it's like, I'd have to have a serious chat with the owners and be like, hey, your spirit is not the only one here, but this one wants to go. They're ready. They're like,
Yeah.
don't want to be a part of this anymore. They don't like it.
Yeah.
And be
They
like,
don't.
you really are hurting them by keeping them here.
Hmm.
And if they're like, all right, he can go, then, I'll help with that. But yeah, I try to, as much as possible, help the spirits equally as the people.
Hmm.
But it does become hard when they're making their living at this. And it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if it's just the one ghost doing everything or the one spirit. It's like
Hmm.
really hard then to go to
Hmm.
these people and go, have you really thought about a new course of life?
Yeah.
Because you're really
Yeah.
hurting the spirit that's here,
Yeah.
and he's the only one you got. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had times when I had to physically remove a spirit and cross them over because you don't know what. It's like Amanda's case in her home. I had to really. It, wasn't like being aggressive. I had to be okay. We're gonna do this. You don't like it. I don't care if you don't like it, but you're gonna have to go. And I had to remove it
Yeah.
because she was freaking out, and she told me how she felt, and she didn't like the
So
feeling.
Yeah, to give a little bit backstory on that. So about 4.5 years ago, I had someone I was casually dating for 4 months pass away, and he stuck around because he never got to, and and I've worked with other psychics, and they also had their spiritual people talk to him too, and he said, "I'm not ready to cross over." The reason why he wasn't ready to cross over is he never got to do the whole wife and kids thing. And I told him, I can't help you with that anymore. If there's something else I can help you with, I'll
Mhm.
help you. But unfortunately, it's not physically possible for me to be the wife and give you a kid. It's not physically possible anymore. But he still didn't want to cross over until he was able to do the whole wife and kids thing. I'm like,
Yeah.
I kept saying it's not possible. And then finally, I didn't mind him visiting me, but then after a while, he kept visiting me with more and more energy. And I'm like, he is saving energy. He's not using it. He keeps saving it up for whatever reason. I don't know what he's going to do with it, but it's starting to worry me. Like,
Yeah.
he wasn't harmful then. I'm like, he is storing energy for a reason. I don't know if I want to find out what.
Yeah.
Oh, I can imagine. I think I know what it was.
And it freaked her out. And
Yeah,
she
like
asked me,
he keeps come
yeah,
back with more and more energy. He's storing it and saving it for some odd reason. And I don't want to
So
I don't want to find out.
I think what he might have been doing is, and this is my personal read of it, is spirits can store up enough energy that they can take corporeal form for a amount of time.
hmm
And so he might have been saying, because you were saying in this situation, we cannot
hmm
do this. So he might have been trying to retake physical form
hmm
to say, hey, I gave you what you wanted. Here I am physically.
yeah.
Your turn.
But I didn't give him a choice, and I
Well,
had
yeah, that you can't force that upon somebody. And that's where love takes a different
it becomes creepy,
name.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's not
So I
the
had to,
love. The forever love ran its course,
yeah. So
and
I
just
had
got to accept that.
so I had to physically remove him from her home and
Hmm.
cross him over. I mean, he can come back, yeah, if he wants to. Once he's crossed over, he can do that, but he can't demand anything from her. So
Yeah,
that's when I had to
Yeah,
physically remove him and cross him over and say, okay, we're gonna do this, whether you like it or not. I'm gonna cross you over. You may protest or whatever you want, but this is what I'm gonna do. If you don't like it, that's too bad. And I did. I did remove him and I did cross him over, and he kind of like got it afterwards. He said, "Okay, I got it," and he's gone. And it was like her her whole the whole energy with that environment was really heavy,
yeah,
and it was like you couldn't breathe for her. So when I did that, it was like a relief, like all the you know, like everything went, "Whew, thank God."
yeah.
And
And admittedly, I was reminded when Amanda, you were saying this isn't possible. The lady, I think was it Australia, who court married a ghost,
there's a
yeah,
couple. There is one in
and then
Australia who
this,
married a pirate ghost. There's another one in the UK
yeah,
who married a ghost too, and she
and
said like
then
she was
filed
being
for
stalked.
divorce,
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
and then like, and this was the part that kind of got me a little confused was when she filed for divorce. She was like, and I want partial custody of our ghost kid, and I'm like, wait, what?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
how, explain to me where this ghost kid came from and how it came about, because it just doesn't, it's like, wait a minute, what?
yeah. Hold on. How can you procreate with a spirit and have a kid, right?
And not only that, but it's like, how,
I think they say astral. astral projection, but
Like
still,
it's one
yeah.
of those questions where you're doing this, right? You're sketching.
I know. I'm like, one, how did this even enter the court system? And two, how did this enter the court system? Because
And how can you get a divorce right from a dead person, right? Once you're labeled dead, I don't think there's any way where you can get married to a dead. Can you?
I don't know. And it'd be interesting. I'd almost wonder if the ghost can file for divorce on the grounds of she cheated,
Yeah.
infidelity, or adultery, and vice versa. It's like, how do you prove this?
And how do you prove that that's a kid is a spirit kid, right?
Yeah.
How
Can
can
you imagine being the judge sitting there and you being brought a divorce case, and it's like, yeah, and my ghost husband.
Yeah. You'd be like,
and
is he in
bringing
the
him to
courtroom?
court?
Yes, he's sitting right there and being like, I have
What?
to pass you an empty chair.
And you say what? And then you're grabbing a cup of water for him, right? You go, what?
But it'd be really, I think, would be the icing on the cake of that would be as if you're sitting in there and all of a sudden the water starts going down in the cup and be like, holy crap, there really is a ghost guy here.
And then you have this EVP, or you have the obvious right there, and he's asking questions.
I know. I'm like, how do you question this ghost in court? Because there's
Just
no.
bringing a spirit box.
You're like, did you really legally marry this woman? And be like, no.
Or did you have kids?
How are we here for divorce? I don't know. I don't know this woman from Adam. And then be like, are we talking to the spirit of her husband? No. Is her husband around? No. Well, this court case just got interesting.
Go, how's your day, honey? Try to explain that to your family, your court case.
Yeah.
Actually, what's
They'll
worse is,
probably-
the worst part we don't even think about is, imagine the lawyer of the ghost going, how are you getting paid for your services?
They're probably calling 911 to Bellevue, right?
I'm like, what lawyer sits there and goes, yes, Mr. Ghost, I will totally take your case and we are going to win.
How do you get alimony too, right? If you're gonna get divorced.
We're like, we're going to totally make it so you don't pay child support. We got you, sir.
Yeah. Like, how does that work? Like, really?
Oh, man.
Oh, like,
Those are moments in the paranormal field. I'm like, you realize we were like 5 steps closer to getting legitimacy in this world, and you have now put us like 40 steps back.
yeah. And now we're gonna be the laughing stock because we're in the paranormal, right?
I know everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, you guys investigate ghost families now." We're like, "No."
Huh?
Felt bad for the person who did the wedding.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that
Pictures, and I'm just like,
fishing.
imagine being the minister or priest. You show up to this beach wedding, they're just like, yeah, the groom is a ghost, so
And the vowels, how would you say your vowels, right?
Well,
Your
not
wedding
only that,
vows.
but you've seen weddings where it's like really light on one side, but never zero. So
Yeah.
it'd be like, who's sitting here representing and who's giving away?
And then you got the family members, right, of the dead side, right? And they're all dead.
Oh man.
Like, oh my god.
You know,
Like-
The funny thing is, the only cases I've ever heard of this are women marrying male ghosts, and I'm like, imagine the day we get a dude that legitimately stands up and says, "I'm marrying my female ghost," and being like, "Dude, are you serious?"
They think you need counseling or something, or you need to see a doctor, right?
I kind of wonder though, with the mentality, is there like maybe something in the male chemistry that we're like, yeah, I'm never going to court to say I'm marrying a ghost chick and having
There's
ghost
someone out there
kids?
will eventually.
Yeah, yeah. And imagine saying, "I'm going to go to the children's store and get diapers."
And be like, I'm a paranormal investigator. I'm bringing my date with me. Who's your date? I met her at the house, and she's, one of the regulars there. It'd be like, you're. Wait, what?
Like, yeah. That's why. Oh, you need help in a bad way, right?
Yeah, I was like, I actually, when I read those stories, I was like, I had to get two or three legitimate sources to prove that this really was a legitimate thing that was occurring.
Was it?
Sadly, yes, it was on the docket,
Oh
or
shit!
they were real cases.
Dang.
She legitimately had a marriage license and legitimately filed divorce.
That'd be great for you to have them on your show.
I don't even think I could have him on my show because I would be sitting there and it'd be like just repeating the same question over and over. Why? How? How? Why?
Like,
I'm willing to bet that that lady will never get an interview on a paranormal podcast
mm,
because I don't foresee any legitimate reputable show
mm-hmm.
actually saying, so you were married to a ghost, what was that like?
The funny thing is now, the where is she is at now. She said that she's in a real relationship, but she doesn't want with the living person. But for privacy reasons, she wasn't going to say who it was. And I'm just like, who dates the actor?
Who
I
wants
mean,
to
especially
marry
when
the
it's
ghost?
well known.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine, Michael, if you're like, I have a new girlfriend. It's the girl who married the pirate ghost and divorced him.
And as what's sad about it is that's going to come up.
Mm-hmm.
That's a matter of public record. It's been in newspapers. It's been on
Mm-hmm.
the net. So I don't know how she thinks she's going to hide it.
Yeah.
But could you imagine, though, somebody brings a spirit box to the wedding for the new couple and be like to somebody's, you know, speak now, forever hold your peace, and the spirit box goes off and says, I do.
Yeah.
Honey, I'm back.
Oh hell no.
Be like, are we accepting ghosts now as able to stop a wedding?
Yeah. Like, I protest to this marriage. Like, who was that?
Oh,
Because there are cases where women have been accosted by spirits right in bed.
actually, I hate to tell you, Irene, but it goes both ways. Males
Yeah.
have been accosted too.
Yeah. Well, I didn't want to made it just one sex, But there have been cases where that has happened, right?
Yeah.
And so I wonder, like, never had that happen to me, right? But
Yeah, I haven't had it either, but I know some people who have.
Yeah, I went to a place and investigated for a night where it was a thing, and then I got I got some activity from the spirit who was supposed to be doing it to the women, and the men are just like, you cannot go in that room where he does it because we don't trust nothing's gonna happen to you. So
mm,
I mean, you can't really defend yourself, you know.
Yeah, that's what every rookie investigator wants to hear.
mm.
Yeah, don't go in that room because it's like, hey, you want me to investigate more with you? We're in a building that does what?
And you don't want me to go in that room? Why? Like,
But no, and what was funny is I was on a location one time and I felt like a hand going in my pocket, like if I had candy in my pocket. And I was like, hey, 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 there's nothing in there for you. I was like, I don't have candy on me. And I'm like, and I never felt it again, but I was like, man, that was like the closest I've ever felt a spirit to me because I've had my shirt plucked in the back,
mm-hmm,
like a snap to let me know they were there.
mm-hmm.
But I was like, man, I literally, it's like, it felt like I had taken my hand and put it in my jeans pocket. And that was the worst part of it is I was wearing jeans. So, those pockets are tight.
Yeah.
It's like, man, I literally felt like there was a hand going in my pocket. And I was like, I even stopped and moved. And I was like, hey, hey, don't be putting your hand in there. There's no food in there.
You're being groped by.
Funny story, Irene, is there was a lady spirit who was well known for doing that in there. So it could have been her. Hey,
Trying to grab your junk.
I'm like, I'm sorry, lady. If you think you're gonna do that, you better pump a few drinks in me first.
Ain't gonna happen.
I'm like, I'm not that type of swinger.
That'd be kind of hard to explain. Like, what happened to you in that room? Well, like, yeah.
I had a very friendly spirit that relieved a lot of tension that was up in that there body.
They were gonna say, "Was she beautiful, honey?"
That brings up an interesting question. If you do get accosted by a
Mm-hmm.
ghost on an investigation, like felt up like that, is
Mm-hmm.
that considered cheating?
I wouldn't think it would be. Would you, Amanda?
What was the question?
So, like we were saying, like if like you get a really friendly spirit that's like being touchy feely, is
In a
that considered
place,
cheating
in a place that your privates.
by a spirit?
Yeah.
It's not, you can't. How do you prevent that though? If they want to touch you, you can't see them. So
Yeah.
I mean,
So I
Irene
mean,
can't say that to her husband because he would never
So
fall for that. I didn't see him when he did it.
I I have I have a barrier around me, right? I create a barrier, so
yeah,
if they wanted to, they can't do it.
yeah. I
I
had
just
2 or 3 of those now, but from lessons learned. But yeah, I've never had that type of friendly spirit. But yeah, I do sit down though and wonder, like, when you go to your partner and say, "Yeah, this spirit, while I was on this investigation, totally grabbed me down there and going, and looking at your partner and going, you can't be mad at me, but at the same time going, why are you telling your partner this?
Like, I'd be really quiet about that one, right? I'd keep that one to myself, right? Like, yeah, you can't tell.
Because technically you're being unfaithful, but at the same point, you're not choosing to be.
Yeah, it's just that you don't talk about it, right? Like, yeah, you're right. Like,
Yeah, I mean, how do you deal with the guilt of that though? Like,
Yeah,
feeling.
I don't even know.
I don't, I wouldn't. It never happened to me, and yeah,
I
uh,
venture to say it'll never happen to me.
I won't say it'll never happen to me, but yeah, that has never happened to me.
I don't see myself putting myself in position to where it's like, yeah, all my defenses are down, so have at it, spirits. No. But
And
at the same token, though, I will never, ever send anyone as an investigator, experienced or not, into a space alone
mm-mm,
with a spirit that's known to do that. I will be like,
No.
nope,
I will be there. I will be
yeah,
on the other side of the door if you are feeling confident, but I'm not leaving the building.
nope, nope. I wouldn't either. It's just something that you don't do, and
Yeah, don't tempt fate.
no, 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 no. Like, the thing is that when you go in a certain situation where you know something's going to happen, like some untoward things that happen, you always make, you can say, you can talk to me, I will ask questions, you can answer me, but you are not allowed to come in my space, right? My space is mine, and that's it.
Yeah,
That's what I usually say, and that's what I usually tell a person that, oh, I don't like the feeling. And I said, well, you have to tell them that you don't give permission to come into your space. And a lot of investigators don't realize that you have to tell them that, right? And it's very
yeah,
important to create your what's allowed and what's not allowed. And a lot of people will not do that. A lot of women will not do that. And I said,
yeah.
hey,
A lot of people try to get the evidence at too much cost and think it's okay as long as I get the evidence and can prove this or that, it's worth it. I'm like, no, it's I never ever put myself in harm's way to get an EVP or get
yeah.
shadow image or a door closing. I'm like, no, I don't.
How far is too far, right? Where do you call the limit, right?
So the I am of the school of I will communicate with the spirit on location.
Mm-hmm.
Friendly conversation, just like we're having.
Mm-hmm.
I am not going to sit there and be like, start to agitate
Mm-mm.
something
No.
to, get reaction and be like, yeah, you know, here we go. I'm not an antagonizer.
Mm-hmm.
However, with that being said, if I feel like spirit is coming after me for something or
Mm-hmm.
trying to get something from me, I will stand my ground, and
Yep.
that's
Yep.
when things
Yep.
get a
Yep.
little interesting.
Yeah. And I don't like sometimes I hear people say, "Come into my body, use my body, use my." I go, "What the heck are you trying to do? Like, you
I'm like,
dumbass!" Like, sometimes they'll say that, right? You go, what?
I was investigating with the team, and they would always say, "Use our energy," and I would go, theirs, not mine. You don't
Yeah.
have the rights to mine."
No.
And
And I'd say,
they'd all look at me like, "What?" I'm like, "Oh no,
no,
you are not giving permission
no,
of my energy
no.
to anything. That's
That's what
mine."
that's why I can't stand like even these so-called TV programs saying, use my energy, like who I'm talking about, right?
Yep.
He'll say, use my energy, try and do something. I go, oh boy. You're like, and then paranormal investigators are trying to act the same way. Use my energy. I go, really? Like I'm saying,
Yeah, and see the difference between me and what like that TV show that we're talking about is
yeah,
when I agitate, I'm the one that stands there and will take it on. I don't back up and go, "Okay, hey, you wanted to talk? Here's your chance. Go in there. They're ready for you." It's like,
yeah,
no. I'm like, I would never agitate something and
no,
then send somebody else in to take care of it.
or come and get me, right? Like,
Yeah.
nah, we don't do that. Like, nope. I mean, and then people are trying to manipulate and trying to do the same thing and thinking they're gonna be Mr. Blah Blah on the investigation, and they said, okay, yeah, you asked for it, you're gonna get it, right?
Anyways, guys, it is getting late, so we are going to wrap it up.
Yep.
Michael, thank you so
Yeah.
much for joining us. You are
Yeah. Thank
invited
you,
back.
Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy to come back and thank you for a fun and
Yep.
Yeah, we'll
enjoyable evening.
definitely pick up and talk more next time
Yeah.
you're on. So
Yeah.
we'll definitely get that
And
scheduled sometime. But again,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
yeah,
Thank you,
and
Michael.
because we're still 9 minutes till, we're still on the day. Happy Mother's Day to everyone.
Yeah,
Happy Mother's Day too.
and thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll
Yes.
see you next time.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.